Okay. So I hope the audio might not be working. Okay, that's fun. Do you guys hear me? Let me do this. Possible technical difficulties. Do you hear me? Okay, testing, test. I'm pretty sure I got this all good. That's plugged in. That's plugged in. It's on. Should be working fine. Hello, Shinshan. You can hear me. Yay. Okay, good. So that's working. I just moved things around and I had to unplug everything from my computer to move it, and I just set it back up. So here we are. Yes, good. Ooh, a new person here. Khaled, welcome. Shun, David, yes, new setup. Good, hearing me, perfect. Okay, so I think we're good. I guess I could use some light over here. That'd probably be useful. That's okay. Yeah, I like it. I think it works pretty well. What is this? Oh, that's for that. Wait. Oh, yeah, okay. Things. I'm all disoriented because I literally just set this up. Like right now, I just finished plugging everything in. So, okay. Did you have to move stuff around because of the cards? No. Although coincidentally, I didn't even think about that. I have a lot more space on my floor to work with cards. I mean, you guys have seen me move my setup before. Hello, Daniela. Welcome. People who have been here, like David, have been here since the earlier days. I think pre 1,000 subs. You know that occasionally my background changes because I tend to move my room around. So here we are again. Yeah, it happens. I feel kind of cramped in this corner, though. I don't know. All right. So, any questions about anything today? I have some things I can talk about based on the previous lesson that was posted. Sort of an extension of that. There's a new concept that I have that I'm calling falling into the next sound or into the next word. And it's a very, very subtle thing that I started noticing with particularly, well, with all speakers, all English learners, but especially even advanced speakers. It's one of the very, very subtle things that makes you sound a little unnatural if you don't fall into the next word. And it's a bit dynamic. It's not always like that. I mean, sometimes we pause or whatever, but that's tied a bit to the breathing through, your words and linking and stuff like that. So we could talk a bit about that if you guys want me to touch on that. I'm going to be making a lesson for it as well. But hello, Gabriel. Welcome back. Aside from that, okay, that's good. I think we had some interesting comments recently. I'm also having some difficulty with getting my computer to Windows 11, which is really stupid because it said that it came ready for Windows 11, and apparently it's not. And I can't get it to work in the BIOS. So, that's techie stuff. You guys probably don't care about that. Although I will say, since you brought up the magic cards, I bought more magic cards. So, but that's all I'm going to buy for a while. Okay, so since nobody seems to have any questions yet, I'll go ahead and talk about this falling forward into the next word thing. He writes a letter. Is it correct or incorrect? Okay, well, welcome, Tayyab. Sorry if that's not pronounced correctly. He writes a letter. Yeah, that's a perfectly grammatically correct sentence. Do you have a specific question about it, or like why would it be incorrect? Because there's he writes, we have the S because it's third person singular. He, a letter, he writes a letter, or a letter like of the alphabet. Yeah, that's good. David Ite. So my first question is, what is the most common way in America to refer to a store that sells sewing supplies? Yeah, David always makes me feel like I'm like on a quiz show. So good job. To refer to a store that sells sewing supplies. I don't really go to a store that sells sewing supplies. I would maybe call it a sewing store. No. I think you can possibly call it a craft store, maybe because usually it's not just sewing. Like there's other things you can buy to make other kinds of crafts, right? Like little things that you make. I feel like there's a word, but I can't think of it right now. Yeah, I would probably call it a craft store or something. That might not be right though. Apparently it's called haberdashery in British English. Interesting. But notions in the US. Neither of those sound familiar. Yes, I said familiar. Why do we do that? That's so weird. Sometimes an R sneaks in. Familiar. I have some questions. I hope I won't bother you asking them. Well, is it or as in the word more, or wait, hold on. Okay, so adding that it, saying is it, that completely ruined the sentence and threw me off. So is or, as in the word more, a neutral O sound or vowel that exists in many languages? Well, I don't know what you mean by neutral O. But what I can say about the O sound, as far as I know from other languages, which is limited, I don't know all the languages in the world. But in my experience, this includes, it's not just European languages, also Japanese seems to be the same. The O is even Russian also. The O is very static. So it's like O, or something kind of like that. For or, if you don't have, okay, if you don't have the cot merger, or is actually aw. It's aw plus It's an R colored aw sound. So it's like R, which I'm probably not doing right because I don't speak that way. So that I would probably say doesn't match other languages. If you use the cot merger, then that aw shifts into o, or the start of what o would be, more or less. And then we just blend it into and we get or. So it's a combination of the English O plus which includes the lip motion and everything. Or. See, it's not just like or. It's or. There's lip motion going with it, just like with O instead of o. So I don't think there's a parallel between that and other languages. That's the best I can answer that question. How do you pronounce won't if the sound doesn't exist in your accent? With an O? I don't even think won't is... Okay, let's see what the dictionary says. Thinking of won't with the aw sound, to me, sounds like something very alien. Like that shouldn't even exist. Oh yeah, that's not... Well, okay. Will it show me this? I don't think it shows me. No, it's not going to show me the contraction. Yeah, like it's just an O. It's an O, guys. Remember, in the cot merger, you have to remember the words that use ah and words that use aw, most of them shift into just one position, ah. There are some words where the aw shifts into an O instead, like won't. I never even... Like, again, you're exploding my brain by associating the word won't with this aw sound. Like that doesn't even seem like it should exist in any parallel universe. Like It's such a strange idea to me. It's just an O sound. Won't. That's it. Won't. I've never heard anybody say want like that. If anything, it sounds maybe kind of British. Definitely doesn't sound American. So it's just an O. Whoa, whoa, oh, whoa. So you start on the W and you go to O. Whoa, won't. In your opinion, what is the most dead giveaway that a person is actually from Latin America when it comes to accent? What are the things we should avoid doing? Well, it depends on if you're speaking Portuguese or Spanish, because those are two completely different things. If you're speaking Portuguese, the biggest thing that comes to my mind, if you're from Brazil, you want to make sure that you're either pronouncing E at the end when there is an E, like happy, don't say hap. And make sure that you aren't adding an E at the end of words that don't have E, because that's, for some reason, it's a really weird thing. I don't know. There's something in Portuguese or in Brazilian Portuguese that causes you guys to do this. I don't know what it is, but I've had a number of Brazilian Portuguese students, and you all do that. You all do that. You add E's at the end where we don't have E's, and you don't pronounce the E's at the end when we do have E's. And it's the strangest thing. I have no idea why you do that. So that's a dead giveaway, 100%. Like, we're going to know that you're a Portuguese speaker. Spanish, I mean, I don't know. I'm too familiar with Spanish to tell. Like, I'm too deep into it. Probably, like, if you can't pronounce Y, like if you tend to pronounce yeah with like j, like instead of saying you say ju. Like, there was so many when I went to middle school. I was the minority, being white. There was just like, it was like 80-90% Mexican or Hispanic, and a lot of them didn't particularly have necessarily an accent, but there were quite a few that, like, they even had like a Spanish accent. And I used to play the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. If you don't know what that is, you don't have to care. People who do know will know what I'm talking about. And a lot of kids, when I was in middle school, they wouldn't say Yu-Gi-Oh, they say Ju-Gi-Oh. Ju-Gi-Oh. Did you play Ju-Gi-Oh? Right? So that's a dead giveaway for Spanish. Certain pronunciation things. Or instead of saying shoes, like anything with an SH tends to get replaced with like a ch. Like, did you wear shoes? Shoes? Right? So shoes. So yeah, it's usually certain sound things. But anyway, yeah. Person with Cyrillic name that has come again, and I don't know how to say your name. Yes, welcome back. I don't know how to refer to you. I think I'm going to call you A, because it looks like the first letter of your name is A. So you are now A. Okay, so welcome back, A. Hello. According to most textbooks on grammar, present, past perfect aren't very widespread in the USA. Is that how it really is? I'm surprised that's in textbooks, because that is relatively true. Yes. I would expect textbooks to not even mention that. So maybe there's some newer textbooks that are actually addressing that. Now, that can also be misleading. We use the present perfect all the time. We use the past perfect sometimes. But compared to, say, British English, where they tend to follow like the strict traditional grammar rules, we don't use them very much in comparison. And I've talked about this before several times in the live streams. The past perfect is used to show which action came first of two actions in the past, right? So if I cook dinner and then you come to my house, right? Grammatically, we're supposed to say something like, I had cooked dinner before you arrived. Okay. We could say that. It's okay. Like, it's not going to sound bad, but it's very clear which action happened first. So we say, I cooked dinner, it's just simple past, before you arrived. Like 99% of the time, that's what we're going to say, because it's very, very clear which action happened first, especially since I'm using, before or by the time or whatever. And so the only time that we tend to use the past perfect is when, based on the context, for some reason, and I'm horrible thinking of examples off the top of my head. I need to sort of like gather them when I realize, oh, this is a good example, and write it down. I haven't done that yet. But there are some cases based on the context where maybe it's not clear which action happened first, and that's the time that we tend to use the past perfect to make it clear. Sometimes we'll still just use it. It'll still just like come out even though it is clear and we don't actually have to use it. But most of the time, probably 99% of the time or so, we just use simple past, simple past. The present perfect is a little trickier. We definitely don't follow the strict rules that British English does. Like if something just happened, like say 2 seconds ago or 2 minutes ago, a British person will say, for example, like let's say I go to the store, I come home, you call me, and I just got home. Notice I said I just got home, simple past. A British person, at least as far as I know, would probably say I've just gotten home or I've just come home. And that sounds kind of weird to us. Like maybe the gotten, because we like to use got a lot, but if you say I've just come home, like it doesn't feel right. We say I just came home or I just got home. So there's actually 3 categories that I've identified for the use of the present perfect. There's times when both British people and Americans will use the present perfect because we have to, right? If I say I have been to Japan, that is something different than saying I went to Japan or I was in Japan. Those are 2 completely different things. I've been to Japan talks about my experience that continues because I'm still alive, so it's connected to the present. It doesn't mean I'm in Japan now, it just means I have that experience, where if I say I was in Japan, now I'm talking about the specific time and certain events that happened. Okay, so there's a difference there, a very meaningful difference in the grammar that makes it to where we have to use one or the other depending on what we're saying. That is in British English, that is in American English. But there are many times when the present perfect doesn't really have much of a difference in meaning. Like it's a maybe very, very, very small difference in meaning between the present perfect and the simple past. And in those cases, sometimes Americans will still use the present perfect and it doesn't matter. Sometimes we use the simple past and it doesn't matter. But we tend to like to use the simple past. And it's a big mess in American English, where British people will say like, hey, if this is the rule for the present perfect, you got to use it. You can't just change it for the simple past. But in American English, we're like, well, if the difference in meaning is so small that it doesn't really matter, we're probably just going to use the simple past. And so the first category would be where British people and American people have to use the present perfect because it's clearly different than the simple past. There are cases where on the other end, because there's a middle, I'm going to go with the ends first. On the other end, there are cases, like I said, where like I've just come from the store. I have just come from the store. That sounds strange. It sounds British. And maybe there's some Americans who think that sounds fine. I don't know. But to me, it sounds very, very strange. So those are cases where like British people would use the present perfect because it's according to the rules, but Americans would never, right? And then in the middle, there's those cases where because it's grammatically correct, we might use the present perfect and it sounds okay. It doesn't sound British to us. But the difference is so small that basically we could just use the simple past and it doesn't matter. That would be the middle case. And most of the uses are in the middle. So there's some things that sound British. There's some things that we have to use the present perfect for. But in the middle, it's kind of like, like you can kind of use one or the other and whatever comes out. But we tend to like the simple past. So especially like, say, a keyword like just. Okay, just tells us that it's now in the past, right? Like if I say, I just did it. Okay, a British person would probably say, I've just done it. Because part of the technical rules of the present perfect is something that recently happened. Americans don't usually use the present perfect for that because we don't have to. If I use the keyword just, I just did it, then you know it's in the recent past. Why would I use the present perfect when I could just use a simple past and it points to something that happened in the past, but just tells us that it recently happened. So there's no need for the present perfect. So it's kind of a big mess, as I said, but that's the basic outline of everything. And I will be addressing that in future lessons sometime in the future. But yeah, it's a good question. Shun, is there a why or a yit sound. I really hate the IPA. What? Okay, a yit sound. So in or after, you got to pick one of those. Okay, so in the diphthong a, as in day and way and more. No, there is not. There is not a y sound. It's eh, which is not it's a little higher, a little different shape. That'd be the start of the diphthong. And then it ends in I. Okay. Now, there's a trick here. So, right, if I say day, if I try to put a Y into that, I'd have to say like daya, waya. That's not the right waya. And I'm kind of having to like drop out of the Y into another sound, which is one reason why I say the Y and the W are not semi-vowels. You can look at them that way, and it can be a useful concept, but a vowel can be pronounced and held, where if I try to do a Y, like, okay, sure, maybe it's like the start of a Y, but a Y needs to be released it's like you, yeah, yes, okay. Where a vowel, I can just hold it. So in order to try to put a Y sound into the word day, I feel like I have to go into Y and then release it so that we hear the Y. If I just try to say like day, it's like, why are you saying it that way? It doesn't, no, there's no Y sound. There's no E sound either. It ends in I, right? It sounds like E, but it's I, because E would be too deep. The Y sound would be too deep, meaning too high, and too far back because it's behind the E sound. However, there's a trick. If you are linking, if you're flowing from a word that ends in the diphthong A, and you're going into any other vowel sound, then it will link with a small Y, not a full Y, a small Y. And that's just because E and I, which is the end of A and I, are close enough to Y that when we release them and go into another vowel sound, it sounds sort of like there's a tiny Y sound there. So if I say the day is, and I might actually even go a little bit higher because now I need to go back into I. I'm not going to say day is, like I can't hold the I sound, okay? Well, I can't hold it in a word. Like I can hold it when I'm just producing an isolated sound, but in words we don't lengthen vowels in English. So right? So in that case, we are going to link with a small Y. We're going to kind of move back into the I. Or if it was day off, right? Like today is my day off. So day off. Here, I'm not going all the way up into Y. I'm going A, and then when I release it, as I said, it's close enough to Y that as I pull out into ah, it creates the illusion that there's a little bit of a Y sound there. And we might go just a little bit higher. But if you go all the way up into a Y, if you say day off, that does not sound good at all. So at best, there's a small Y if you're linking to a vowel. But the word itself, like today's a good day, there's no Y sound there at all. There's no Y. Okay. Is there an A sound in the word at, as in look at you? If you reduce it, it's possible. You can say, so it's supposed to be a, like cat. You can reduce it to I, look at you. You can reduce it to a schwa. You can say, look at you. Both are fine. It doesn't matter. You can actually, I believe, also reduce it to like more of an eh sound, like look at you. But probably it's going to be it or Okay, by the way, our stationary, that looks like it's misspelled. It looks strange to my brain. I think that last E is supposed to be an A. I'm probably wrong. Let's see. Stationary. I was wrong. Good job, David. Yeah. There's some things to natives that we're like, is that right? Because we have so many like weird little spelling patterns, and it's just like, it feels like it should be an A, but no, it's an E. Awesome. By the way, are stationary stores a thing in the US, or are they usually part of some bigger department store like Target? Yeah, I think we have like maybe some random stationary stores here and there, like especially like in small towns, but I don't usually see them. They're usually part of bigger things, which you misspelled Walmart. It's only one L in Walmart. I got you on that one. But anyway, could you make a video about how to pronounce the D in written, sudden, Biden, hidden? Well, I'm pretty sure I already did in a way. Yes, but yes, I can make a short about that. I'm like so terribly behind on the shorts. I have a list. You can kind of see my board there. You probably can't read it because this might be backwards, but I haven't quite gotten to them because things. But I know I need to get on it. Like, I also need to make a new lesson. Things, yes. I'm trying. Really, I think my brain is like mostly waiting until Monday, which is when I have my appointment again with the psychologist, so I can have round 2 at explaining my case for why I think I have ADHD, since I did such a horrible job before. And after that, whether the result is positive or negative, my brain will probably be able to focus a little bit better on some other things. But that's just kind of been in the back of my brain weighing on me a lot. So it's been extra hard to do stuff. Okay, shin shin, haha. I don't know what that's in reference to. But in souvenir, would you stress the su or the near part? Souvenir. The su might have secondary stress, but the near is definitely a primary stress. Souvenir. If I say it the other way, souvenir. Here's a souvenir. It sounds weird to me. Maybe there are people who would say it the other way, but to me it sounds strange. I would put it on near. Could you make a video about? Oh wait, did I already do this? Okay. Is it a weak D, stop D, or dental D? Technically none of the above. Stupid YouTube, stop moving it. Okay, so we're spamming comments, which is not good. I will go ahead and give a warning. I don't know if maybe it wasn't going through and you kept trying to put it through because you have like an internet connection, something or whatever, but do not spam comments, please and thank you. I will kick you. I'm pretty sure I can do that. I will kick you if you're spamming comments. But let's see. Red and sudden, but so okay. And I remember I talked about this recently. I don't know. I think it was a reply to a comment. I think it might have been your comment. So the answer is it depends. Remember, there's not just one answer usually. If you fully enunciate, especially remember with the stop sounds, there's always a range to every sound. But especially with the stop sounds, right? We have the strong, we have the weak, we have the second weak for the T and D, which is a flap D. We have the stops, and we have a potentially dropped sound. And depending on the sounds around, will allow us to do different things. But even if you can do one particular thing, like say stop it, if I say what, can't type. If I say the word what, right, in isolation, like if you're looking at me and I say what, right, I'm probably going to stop it. I'm not going to say what. Like there's no reason for that. Can the T come out? Can I push out a little weak T at the end? Yeah. In pretty much any case, it's possible because that's the fully enunciated form of the word. Usually we're not going to. It's always possible that it might come out. So T at the end of a word in isolation, if it doesn't connect to anything, by default would stop. But that doesn't mean that you can't fully enunciate the word and push the T out. Okay. Now, if you do that all the time, you're probably going to sound weird because we don't do it all the time, but it's always possible. So in that case, there's two possibilities. There's one that's very likely and there's one that's less likely. So in a case like this, okay, we have ridden, sudden, biden, hidden, rodent, didn't. Okay. If I fully enunciate, if I say it clearly, the D is just a weak D because it's at the start of an unstressed syllable, right? Think of the rules. I have lessons on this. Think of the rules. We have Ds. It doesn't matter if it's written with two Ds. It's just spelling. It doesn't affect anything with pronunciation. The D is at the start of an unstressed syllable. So what happens? It's a weak D. Okay. So it's not going to be a strong D. So the clearly enunciated version here, unless like I could say ridden, sudden, biden, That would be special case. I'm making it a strong D because maybe you're not understanding what I'm saying and I'm really emphasizing the word. I'm pushing it all the way to clearly enunciated. But usually the clearly enunciated version would be the weak D because it's at the start of an unstressed syllable. So we're not going to go all the way to the strong one. Okay. So it starts here. Ridden, sudden, biden, hidden, rodent, didn't. And I'm actually doing that second weak D, which is more of a flap. I could do ridden, sudden, biden, hidden, rodent, didn't. And that's a regular weak D. That would be a little more clearly enunciated. Because it's at the start of an unstressed syllable and it's between two vowels, that actually triggers the flap, right? So that's going to be the second weak D. Either way, it's going to be a weak D. But it's probably going to be a flap in particular. Okay, so now you're asking, is it weak? Is it stop? Is it dental? Technically, it's a weak, but it's specifically a flap, which I call the second weak D. Now, that is when it's more clearly enunciated. Can we do something else here? Yes, because when we have a T or a D followed by like a little syllable with N at the end, so in this case, it would just be like in or un. You could say it either way. We have the ability with the T and the D to then actually stop it, possibly with a nasal plosive, especially on the D. We tend to like to do the nasal plosive. So we're not going to say like ridden, like that's too separated. So we're going to actually kind of let that D, after we sort of stop it, we're going to let it push back out through the nose without releasing. Ridden, sudden, sudden. So I'm just going in that position, stopping it first, and then holding that position, but then letting it come out the nose. So that's what we call a nasal plosive. Plosive is like explode, explosive, right? So after I close it, I hold the position and then let it push out through the nose. Ridden, sudden, biden, hidden, rodent, didn't. Okay. And it doesn't really matter if there's a T at the end, because we can either stop the T or probably just ignore the T in many cases. So yes, and there's even a space between that where instead of doing like ridden, where we don't open up at all and we just do that nasal plosive back into the N sound, you can do rid. Oh, wait, hold on. Can we do it with the D? Hold on. Ridden. No, okay, we can't do it with the D. With a T, like say in mountain, which would be the same thing, mountain, right? You can actually say like mountain, and that's because the T, when you stop the T, you don't have to actually go into the position. You can just do a straight glottal, and it'll sound like a stop T, and so that allows us to be open to go into the I and then the N, or you can just go straight into the T and drop the vowel and do mountain, just like ridden, mountain, ridden. So anyway, so it could be a weak D. Most likely by default, it's probably going to be a flapped D or a nasal plosive. Either one, it doesn't matter. If you say ridden or ridden, they're both very common. Okay, there's two common answers there. It doesn't matter. Dental, no. Under any circumstances, no. A dental T and a dental D will never, ever, I want to make it very clear, will never, ever replace a regular T or D in English. Never. Okay, the dental T and the dental D variation is a replacement for the TH sounds. If you try to replace a regular D with a dental D, you're going to sound like you have an accent. You're going to sound maybe Hispanic or something. So if I say, instead of ridden, if I try to do like a dental D and I say, which I don't even know if that might be hard, ridden. I've never, I don't know if I can't even do it. I can't even speak. My tongue doesn't even want to do that. So yes, basically no dental D there. Under no circumstances, not even possible. Okay, so hopefully that answers that. You could write it just once. Write what? I don't remember. What were we talking about? You have to, I don't know what that's about. He always responds. Oh, I see, because of the multiple same comment. Yeah. Hello, Denny. Welcome to the chat. A little late. Sorry. I'm just now seeing you. You know, this is how things go. Hello, Finn, as well. The day's going pretty good. Just here, trying to get through the comments. Can you somehow reduce the word started in a sentence when you're speaking faster? We started. Yeah. In really fast speech, remember fast speech, like really fast speech, not just like, because there's like normal, there's like a little bit of a range of normal where it's like maybe a little slower, maybe a little faster. But then there's like super fast speech. In super fast speech, things start to break down and very strange things happen that natives are not even aware of. Like a lot of it, I'm still not even aware of, but working with some students with like some recordings that I've made that they're like advanced recordings that I wanted them to write what they heard before we did an analysis. And they were like, hey, I noticed this. And I was like, what? And I listened to it. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. So with started, right, it's supposed to be started. So we have a ST, which weakens the T and makes it sound kind of like a D, like a weak D. The second T there is a flap D because it's at the start of an unstressed syllable between two vowels, R and I or And then we have a D at the end, which you could say is a weak D, or you could stop started. Okay, now, if I'm speaking really, really fast, I can get to the point where I do the star, and then I kind of start to bring my tongue up like I'm going to flap, but I don't actually flap. And instead I redirect it to I. Started. And if I say it really fast in the flow of speech, the movie started. I'm not actually hitting that flap D, and yet any native would clearly be able to understand I'm saying started. Fast speech is its own little universe, like really fast speech. It's its own little universe in terms of what exactly happens. And I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'm glad you're asking questions like that because you're probably noticing things and you're like, hey, is this something that natives do? Or is this just something this one person did because it was weird and it came out funny? So it's good to ask questions like that. But as you get better at hearing, obviously, and even maybe you never have to speak that fast. Like you can speak sort of like a normal / like normal fastish kind of speed. And that's all you really need. You don't have to speak as fast as a native can speak, like at top speed, because most of us don't usually even speak that fast. So I definitely wouldn't worry too much about it in terms of your ability to produce it. Your ability to understand it, yes, obviously some people speak really fast and it helps to know what's going on there. But I wouldn't worry about trying to mimic that, especially because, again, this is a special realm of super fast speech. And you don't need to, like, unless you have a specific reason where you really want to speak that fast for some reason, then you really don't have to care about it. Okay. Some Americans pronounce ST as SHT. Yeah. Okay. I get this question sometimes. Strong, street. Use. I've never heard a native speaker pronounce use as use. What do you use? Yeah, that one I can't comment on because I've never heard that. But the SHT thing, now it's not just ST being pronounced SHT. I'm pretty sure it's STR being pronounced as SHTR. And the reason why it's not supposed to happen, you do not have to mimic that. You do not have to repeat that to sound natural. That is just a strange thing that can happen. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily, like, maybe in some people's speech, it's like the normal way they say it, but I think it's something that just can come out that way. And it's not like the default way to pronounce it. Like if you hear a native say strong, and you say, okay, say the word strong, like say it nice and clear. They're probably going to say strong, right? And they're going to get rid of that SH most likely. Might depend on the speaker. So partially it's a lazy thing. I don't think it has anything to do with German. Nothing to do with like Vogue or trends or anything. Maybe a regional thing a little bit, but I think this is something that can happen in the speech of any native who's an American speaker, because it's a physical mechanics thing. We have the S, and then we have the T, and then we have the R, and this is why I say it's the STR, not just the ST. Like if I say stick, nobody's going to say shtick, right? That would be a different word. So the T and the R consonant, not R vowel, not the vowel, T and the R consonant. I've talked about this before. There's two ways to pronounce it. Some natives use both. Some use one, some use the other. And it doesn't matter. They all sound perfectly fine. They all sound neutral and natural. Some speakers will say ter, right? So they'll say if it's the word train, they'll say train, 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 train. As you hear a T, you hear an train. Other natives, such as myself, will actually, in the presence of that R, the R consonant, will change that T into a CH, and we'll say train, train. And this has to do with, again, the physical mechanics of releasing the T and going into the R. It's actually easier to sort of just slur it into a CH, blend it into a CH, and then pull into the R instead of trying to get a nice clear T. And so train, that's a perfectly fine way to say it. Now you add an S in front of that. And again, because it's really easy and more convenient to not make a nice clear T, but to blend it into a CH, okay, what happens if we have an S in front? It can also be convenient, or it can just happen to come out, where sometimes people will say strong, strong, strong. And it's because instead of doing a nice clean S, and then a nice clean T, and then a nice clean R, strong, strong, strong. Okay. Especially if a person doesn't really say the T plus R, they'll do the CH plus R, and they say train. So they already want to say trong, right? And then we add the S in front of it. Well, CH is a blending of T and SH. So we get a little lazy, and we say strong. Instead of doing a nice clear S, we change it into a CH, close into the T, blend that T back into the SH as a CH, and then go into the R. So I think it's a lazy thing, but it's also, especially for speakers who say chur instead of ter with that R consonant. It's just a natural thing that can happen, but it's not the way to pronounce it. It's not like the correct way. It's supposed to be strong. The TR can still be a CH. There's nothing wrong with that. But that S is supposed to be an S. It can just come out as an SH, and it's okay. It's fine. It just sounds a little lazy. Strong, strong, strong. Okay, so hopefully that answers that. But yeah, for the U's being pronounced U's, that's very weird to me. Can you help me pronounce the following countries? Didn't we do this before? Pretty sure we did this before. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz. This one I'm not sure. I want to say like either Kyrgyzstan or Kyrgyzstan. Like I don't even know. That middle part right there with the Z and the S, I'm really not sure, but probably. Yeah, we probably just dropped the Z. Kyrgyzstan. That's probably how it would go. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan or Tajikistan. I'm not really sure. Probably the first one. Some people will probably use one or the other. And Pakistan. Yeah. So it's the stands. It makes sense. Good. I might have asked this before, but there's so much variability, and I never remember whether I was supposed to use the ava or the ah in a lot of these. Like, is it Kazakhstan? No. No, Stan is Stan. Okay. STAN is Stan. Maybe there's some words that use STAN where it's an exception or whatever, but like stand, right? Stance, whatever. So stan. Okay. So that's a, especially in his country's names. It's always going to be a. Okay. So that's that. But when it comes to the other ones, it partially depends on if it's a stressed syllable or not, right? It's like Kazakhstan, which I think some people say Kazakhstan, but I would say Kazakh. So that second A is going to be reduced to maybe it or because it's not stressed. But yeah. Einstein's, welcome. Is it a habit or an habit? Oh yeah, I hate this question. It's a good question. I've heard bad habits. I just looked it up and Google says it's a habit, but still, could anyone say it that way? I'm not sure what the bad habits. I don't know what bad habits has to do like with dropping the H. I think we have some confusion here. Okay. Two separate things are going on here. As for the basic question, is it a habit or an habit? That might depend on the speaker. So H is just air. Okay, and when I say it depends on the speaker, I mean dialectical, not Americans. I mean like Americans say versus British English. Because there's weird things that happen with the H. Like British people, and I guess maybe some Americans, for some strange reason, say herb. Like they'll actually pronounce the H in herb. And most Americans don't. We say herb, we ignore the H. Then, of course, there are words like our, where all speakers, like there's just no H. The H is just spelling. So it can be very confusing. It's like, okay, I hear some people pronouncing the H on this. I hear some people not pronouncing the H on that. And I know this is not directly answering your question yet. Don't worry. There's a reason why I'm talking about this. Because of this, because the H is just air, and because there's some like dialectical variation, and like sometimes where certain words have it pronounced and other words don't, or other dialects don't. The traditional thing, for example, I think they still use this in British English. So if you have the word history, which the H is pronounced even in British English, history, I'm pretty sure British people say this. They'll say "an history," which to an American is one of the most annoying sounding things that you can possibly do. It's like, I feel it. It feels gross. It feels really gross. And history. It's like, why are you doing that? So the first part here is that traditionally, because H is just air, and then the sound after it is always going to be a vowel, right? It's always H plus a vowel. You're supposed to, like, if it's A, right, when we do A, the next sound needs to be a consonant sound. Well, H is technically a consonant, but no, I call it the voiceless vowel, right? Because that's kind of what it is. It's a voiceless vowel. It usually more or less takes the sound of the vowel sound that's after it. So if I say habit, I start with an A that's voiceless, right? Which all vowels are voiced. So it makes the vowel voiceless, and then it becomes voice. Habit. Okay. So probably because of that, the traditional thing is that you're supposed to use an, because we use an before a vowel. We use a or a, right? Whatever, it's not a. Just without the n if it's before a consonant. So if I say an example, okay, many Americans are, not always, but often breaking that rule, and then we'll say example. I'll even do that sometimes. So I think that's something that's kind of fading away and will disappear in American English eventually. But you're supposed to say an example or a man, right? Not an man, right? If you say an man, that would sound so weird. So that's why when British people say an history, it sounds so weird to us. It's like, why are you saying that? Okay, so that's the background. Okay, so we know H is kind of weird in some dialects. Some words have it pronounced, and the same words might not have the H pronounced in other dialects, like between American and British. And then we also know that we're supposed to put an before a vowel, and H is just breath. And so you can sort of see why historically and history would make sense. Okay, but in American English, we don't do that. Okay, if there's an H, and if there is anybody in American English who does this, they're probably grammar police. I can almost guarantee they're probably very, very educated grammar police who are really attached to like the traditional ways and this and that. And I mean like ancient traditional ways, not like most people just don't speak this way anymore in American English. British English is its own thing. So you can ignore those people. I always very strongly recommend that you ignore the grammar police. They can give you lots of good technical information, but most of it is, number one, useless, and number two, a lot of it doesn't match the way we actually speak anyway. So an American would never say an habit. Never. I'd be super surprised if an American did that. Again, unless maybe they're grammar police. Even then, for this particular case, I don't know. It would just annoy me so much. Okay. So that's the first part. The second part, I think you're getting a little confused here because it looks like bad habits and you're kind of like, you have the H surrounded. So like maybe we're dropping the H. Okay. Remember, because the H is just air, when we're talking about linking, not the word itself, okay, the H in habit is pronounced, just like the H in her is pronounced. The H in he is pronounced, okay? The H in house is pronounced. Now, some of these words are stressed, some of them are not. But when it comes to linking, because the H is just breath, when you're going from one word to another word, especially if there's a consonant at the end of that previous word, consonants like to connect to vowels. And because the H is just breath, the consonant's going to be like, hey, you don't really exist, H, because you're just breath. So I'm just going to connect through this vowel and ignore you. Okay. So instead of saying bad habits, which we can do, you can always push out the H. It's supposed to be there. It sounds nice and clear. Bad habits. Notice I'm not even stopping the D. I'm doing a little weak D and then going into the H. Bad habits. That's fine. But in the flow of normal speech, probably what's going to happen, the H is going to be ignored. Okay. The D, because now when D connects over to a vowel, it likes to flap if the sound before it is also a vowel. So bad habits, bad habits, bad habits, bad habits, bad habits. I have a lot of bad habits, bad habits. Okay. Now for this particular combination, bad habits, bad habits. It does sound a little bit better with the H, and there's a little exclaimer here, a little star, a little asterisk, which is that if the H is at the start of a stressed syllable, we tend to be more likely to keep it. It's always possible to push through and erase it. But occasionally it will sound a little bit better if you keep the H, if it's at the start of a stressed syllable. If it's like her or him or he, that H will almost always disappear anyway, unless it's like the first, again, it's linking. So if it's like he likes it, you're never going to drop that H. Or if I say habits are important, you're never going to drop that H. Okay. It's only if there's something that can connect through the H, like a consonant here. So I think we had like two things that were getting mixed up here. I don't know. Let me know. And hopefully that sorted everything out. If you have any other questions, let me know. Maybe I was talking about something that you weren't even getting at and you're like, no, I'm talking about this. And then that's fine. Just restate it, whatever. But that's that. Okay. Stupid chat, stop moving. Okay. Nope, that's not where I was. Okay. When you pronounce letters, okay, typo, letters next to each other, like TP, which one is supposed to be aspirated? I'm probably going to say neither, because the only way that a T or a P would be aspirated is if they're at the start of a stressed syllable. So number one, this would never happen at the start of a word. There's no word that is going to start with TP, so that takes care of that. Now you could have the stress in the middle, in which case the T is probably going to be part of the first syllable and the P is going to be part of the second syllable. And if the P is part of the second syllable and that's the stress syllable, then the P will be aspirated. See, it doesn't matter what sounds are together. It doesn't matter what sounds are together. When it comes to the stop sounds, the aspiration is directly tied and dependent on the stress. If it's at the start of a stress syllable, it's aspirated. If it's not at the start of a stress syllable, it's not aspirated. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter what sounds are around it. Well, okay. Within reason, like if there's an S, like in start, the T, you could say technically isn't right at the start of the syllable, but the S likes to weaken the T, and so that's a special case, special combination. But here with two stop sounds, that doesn't affect anything. Now, I can't think of a case. Can you give me an example where T and P would be together? Oh, okay, I see. I think just pick. Okay, so like in a word, I can't think of an example. Like I'm thinking of like PT, like acceptance. But then that P is at the end of a syllable and at the end of the stressed syllable, acceptance. And then the T is at the start of an unstressed syllable. So neither of those would be aspirated. But for T and P, I guess maybe between words, I'll come back to your other comment there in a second. As a Spanish speaker myself, I tend to say S in words. I'm trying to adjust my to which I know is not quite right because Spanish doesn't have in English. In words that start with the consonant S sound. So is there any tip to avoid that mispronunciation? Okay, yeah. And it's a common Spanish mistake. Going back to Gabriel's question earlier, it's something that'll give you away as a Spanish speaker. Yeah. If instead of saying stupid, if you say estupid, right? Or if you say instead of like strong, you say strong. He's very strong. You know, obviously there's other details there that are going to give you away, but yeah. And then of course, sometimes this makes a difference. Like if you're trying to say specially, there's a difference between specially and especially. Those are two different words. And a Spanish speaker will usually only say one, regardless of which one, because they add the right? And that can be confusing. So any tips? Yes. You have to train your brain. So your brain, as a Spanish speaker, says words don't start with s. Like you don't start a word with s, right? Or maybe you do. Hold on. Does that exist in Spanish? Simple. Okay, right. So you don't say es simple, right? You say simple. Okay, so that exists. So ignore what I said before. So you have the ability to do that, right? Without putting the S or putting the in front of it. But especially if it's a similar word, like you have especialmente, right? So if you want to say especially, that fits. But if you want to say specially, which could be a translation of especialmente, wait, could it? Especialmente es, let's see, se cocinó especialmente para ti. It was cooked specially for you. It was cooked especially for you. Yeah, that would probably be translated as specially, provided I'm using especialmente correctly, which I think I am. Anyway, I'm not a native here, guys. I'm not perfect. But you need to train your brain in those similar words where you would use S in Spanish to drop the e. Okay, so you just have to retrain your brain, right, to do that. And you already know how to do that in Spanish because, as I said, you can say simple, simplemente. And so use that as the base and say, okay, I already know how to do this. I just need to do it in this word. So then if you're trying to say like special in English, pretend you're saying like, right, you can even keep the rest of the Spanish accent like as a bridge. So instead of saying like especial or especial, right, especial, you say, okay, special or special, and just drop that part and then adjust the rest. So you can get used to dropping the it's just retraining your brain. That's all. Just like me going the other way, right? I don't want to say special. Wait, is this special? Especial. I can't even, now my brain's all confused. Anyway, you get the point. You get the point. Yeah. My brain is not on Spanish right now. So about the voice placement, I noticed that when I'm sitting talking to my buddies, I can go deep with my voice, but when I'm standing and I try to speak, I'm not able to go that deep. Okay, well, about voice placement, as you may or may not be aware, I don't think voice placement is very important. Trying to have a deep voice just affects your pitch. Okay, I can sit here speaking like this all day long if I wanted to. I don't know why I would, but I could. I still sound like a native speaker, just with a deeper voice. Doesn't affect anything. Now, based on the way I usually speak, people are going to be like, why are you talking that way? But if I just met you and I say, hi, my name's Josh, how are you doing? Okay, well, that sounds perfectly fine. there's no problem. But the way I'm speaking now also sounds perfectly fine. Placement is not that big of a deal. In fact, this thing that I made a video on before, this last video I published about breathing through your English, I think this is actually, when a lot of people talk about placement, I think that this is actually a bigger thing, and it actually fixes a lot of the placement problems. Now, placement does exist, yes. It can help you, yes, but it's a minor thing. Do not try to just deepen your voice, like try to speak really deep and speak from down here, because all you're doing is changing your voice. Okay, you're not speaking English better. You're changing your voice. That's mostly pretty much that could just be all you're doing, because if just by trying to like speak from down here and speak deeper, okay, if that doesn't adjust your vocal tract and how you're making certain sounds, it's going to have no effect on your English. It's just going to make you sound like you're speaking from a deeper tone, right? Deeper pitch. So please, I very strongly recommend that. Again, I can't say for everybody. If you speak very nasally up here, yes, you might want to try to not speak from your nose so much. That can be a thing. But generally speaking, depending on your language, it can have maybe a bit of an effect, but I recommend for most people to ignore placement. Ignore placement. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. It will give you a small benefit. It's not going to fix your English. Okay. If, let's say, you have done everything else, your sounds are perfect, your stress is perfect, your rhythm is perfect, your breathing through your English is perfect, and everything else is perfect, but it still seems like there's something just a little bit off, that's probably where you want to start tweaking the placement. And I understand that obviously you're at a certain point where you're advanced, and it might be harder to change your placement a little bit. But if that's the last piece and that's the only thing you have to pay attention to, it's not going to be quite so difficult, especially because if you're trying to actually like shift certain sounds and stuff and always speak in that shifted way and get used to that, it's really not that big of a deal. It's like if I were to go if I were to try to move the sounds kind of a little farther forward in my mouth, and I'm trying to kind of speak maybe from like here or up here a little bit, you can kind of see that the sounds are a little bit different because I'm trying to like push them up forward a bit. And I still wouldn't say that this necessarily sounds weird in American English. It kind of sounds a little bit like a regional dialect, maybe a little bit Southern in a way, kind of, I'm not sure. But if going back to normal, if I were like, if everything else was perfect, like it is for me, because I'm a native, and that's all I had to do, I would just have to try to get used to that feeling of speaking from that point. And it's not going to be that big of a challenge, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a thing to fix as the last thing, if you need to. Everything else is going to have a much bigger impact, in my opinion. So I would ignore placement. Definitely don't just try to make your voice deeper, because you're not doing anything except changing your voice. Is R pronounced as R? Good question. Yes. Yes and no. Fully enunciated. Remember, there's the full enunciation and there's reductions. Sometimes the fully enunciated version of two words is different, where the reduced version of one or both words is the same. So with our, O-U-R, it's supposed to be our. It has to use the ow diphthong, our, okay? Our car, that's our car. However, most of the time, 99% of the time, we don't say our, we say R. It's pronounced R. It's just the R-colored ah vowel, okay? R. Now, R, A-R-E, is naturally pronounced R. That's the fully enunciated way to say it. But we know that R is commonly either reduced or probably contracted, like they are there, right? And so that's sort of maybe a little bit of a special case with the contractions. But even if I say like, are you going to the party? I can say, are you going? Are you going? Are you going? So I can reduce it to right? So there are reductions for R, A-R-E, that don't match our or R, right? It's like further reduced. But our does commonly reduce to R and will be pronounced the same as the fully enunciated version of A-R-E. So yes, they can be pronounced the same. Yes. And again, saying R for saying R for OUR. So instead of our, we say R. That is the most common way to say that word. If you're constantly saying our, you're going to sound strange. It's going to stand out. And also when you say just pick. Okay, so now we're back here. The P is supposed to be aspirated, right? Even though there's an S sound before. Okay. Yes, good question. Very good question. This actually is a point that I haven't gotten to. For some reason, I've noticed it's a little strange. You would expect that if two sounds normally go together and they sound this particular way, like say S and P. If I say speed, the S kind of weakens the P. It's the S and the P are at the start of a stressed syllable, but it kind of weakens the P, makes it sound almost kind of like a B. Okay. And that's fine. So you would expect that, let's say we have pick, which is at the start of a stressed syllable. And then if for some reason there's an S sound before it, because we know we can drop the T in just and just say just, okay? And we connect that S over, because S likes to connect to other consonants, that should weaken the P, right? But that's not how it works, because there's a little trick with linking that works differently than if the two sounds are naturally part of a word. And the trick is that whatever links doesn't get drawn into the stress. Okay, and what I mean by that is, for example, if I say on, let me think of a stressed word that starts in a vowel. On, whatever, I'll just put expert, like on expert advice. Okay, so it's not going to be like on nexpert, where the N gets pulled into that stress. It's going to be on expert, on next. So it's really the E, and it can be very subtle and difficult to hear, but it's the E that gets that stress. But the N doesn't actually, the sound links over, but it doesn't get pulled into the stress. It's not next, it's just next, instead of next, okay? And another good example, right, with the stop sounds. So as I've mentioned in several places before, if I say kick it, okay, when a stop sound connects over to a vowel, it stays weak, okay, even if that next syllable is stressed. So in this case, it is not stressed, so we would expect for it not to be stressed anyway. So kick it, kit, okay, it's just a weak K. Now what if I say kick and Anthony? Right, that's a name. Kick Anthony. Anthony. Okay. Now that first syllable is stressed, but we don't say kick Anthony. Kick Anthony. No, we're not going to make that a strong K. It's still going to be a weak K. Kick Anthony. Kick can. So we're not going to push out that breath in the K. It's going to be weak, but then the A gets that stress. Okay. So that makes it a little easier to hear with stop sounds. So when we're linking, the stress is still separate, okay? So whether the first word is stressed or not, it doesn't matter. Whether the second word is stressed or not, it doesn't matter. The sounds can link, but the stress does not. So when we say just pick, it's not going to be just pick, like just speed. It's like a longer S, just speed. Speed. It's still that weakened P because of the S. But if I say just pick, it's not going to be just pick. No, it's just pick. I'm going to push that P out because it's at the start of a stressed syllable. The linking, because think about it, that's how the word pick is supposed to be pronounced. If something comes before it, that's a different issue. Okay, it's a completely different thing. Okay, something now happens to link to it. There's an S there, and it moves over to the P. It's not going to affect the pronunciation of the P. Because that P wants to be strong by itself in that word, okay? I hope that makes sense. I should probably make a lesson about that because that's kind of important to know. Very good question, yes. Okay, I've noticed that there's a subtle Y sound between and y, such as clingy and singy, songy. Clingy. clingy, 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 singy, 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 songy, 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 songy. Songy, 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 songy. The only thing that I would say, like, which I wouldn't even mention this because it's incidental, but like you might hit a little bit of a Y as you're moving into that E. And we don't usually go all the way up into E. Like we get close to it. We don't say like singy, songy, clingy. And notice because I'm also getting a lot of nasal interference there. Clingy, ngy, ngy. And so we'll tend to kind of do like a lazier E there, which is kind of closer to a Y, maybe like halfway between an E and a Y. But as you're moving from the which is closed back here, the mouth doesn't have to be very open. And then you have to go release and go forward into E. You're going to pass that Y sound. And so it can create the illusion that there's a little bit of a Y, like a subtle Y, as you say. And so if that exists, it's just incidental as you're passing from to E. Like it just happens to be there. Yeah. How do you say weren't in fast speech? I can barely recognize it, but I happen to hear were and sometimes when. For instance, you weren't fired. Okay, if I try to say this really quickly, you weren't fired. 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 You weren't. So what I'm saying there, it's like were, basically plus a stop T. Weren't. And I'm also getting a little extra nasal on that which creates the illusion of an N. So I'm not actually closing into the N. Kind of like with don't and won't. I'm actually starting to notice little subtle cases where we can actually use a little extra nasalization on a vowel in order to avoid actually creating the N and allow us to speak faster. Again, this is usually for like fast speech. Sometimes like don't and won't, it doesn't have to be super fast. But with don't and won't, you can say don't, where it's like a little more nasal. You don't do an N, you don't do a T. Like I don't like it, I don't like it, don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. It's just a little more nasal. I could say were, a little bit nasal with a stop T. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. Now, if I try to drop that stop T and I just say, you weren't fired. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. Now, if I don't do the nasal on the and I say were, which would be positive, you were fired. You were fired. See, there's no nasal there. You were fired. That sounds positive. But let's say I drop the N, I drop the T, but I make that a little bit nasally. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. Now it sounds negative. Okay, so that's a little trick that we can do in faster speech. If you slow that down, it's going to sound weird. If I say you were fired, you're like, were, what's were? That's not even a word. So it's only for fast speech. Keep that in mind. Can we do anything else? Sometimes what we'll do with the negative, so you're saying like were or were, something like there's this extra sort of like syllable there. We can say like you weren't fired, weren't, and we'll add this extra vowel. It's not supposed to be there, but it's actually a semi-common thing for us to do for whatever reason. I don't know why, but in this word we can do that. And everything else that I just said could apply. So I can fully enunciate with that extra syllable and say weren't, you weren't fired. Like, especially if I'm emphasizing you weren't fired, right? So I'm trying to draw it out into like two separate syllables. Or I could say, now in really fast speech, we're probably not going to add that extra syllable because that's more for us to say, but it could still happen. But let's say if I dropped the T, you weren't fired. You weren't fired. Now I'm closing into the N, but I'm dropping the T. And because we're adding that, because the positive would just be were, there's no extra syllable there. So if you add that extra syllable, don't make it anything nasal, but just close into the N at the end and drop the T, it will still sound negative. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. You weren't fired. So there's actually several different ways that you can say weren't, especially in fast speech or even in potentially normal speed speech, depending on exactly what we're talking about. And so, yeah, it's a good question. So you're starting to notice these things, which is a good sign. But for anybody who didn't know that, now you know. Yes, there's quite a bit of variation on that particular word, the negative were, so weren't. Thank you for asking my question. I was having them for a while. No problem. You're welcome. Notice. Recognize. Maybe like notice instead of recognize. I see. Might be a little bit of a better word, but recognize is okay there. Notice I said recognize it. We probably have it there. That's the big problem. Is it okay? Okay, good question. Where would we split the word boundary? So is it problem or problem? Is it figure or figure? Now think about it. Let's think about it, right? Because the way that the language is set up, we've talked a lot about linking. And there's, certain things like consonants connect to vowels, right? And so if I say on it, it's gonna sound, it's not that N is disconnecting from ah. We don't say on it, right? But if I were to sort of try to emphasize the fact that it sounds like the N is connected, I might say it that way. So I might say it sounds kind of like on knit. Now it's knit, right? And so that also happens inside of words. Okay, it's just the flow of sounds, how sounds connect through the flow of speech, whether that's inside of a word, between words. Some linking rules between words won't necessarily apply inside of words. There's some weird cases here and there, but in general, the sounds flow the way that they flow, whether it's inside a word or between words, because we're just producing a bunch of different sounds, stringing them together, and your brain separates out, okay, this one ends here, and this one ends here, and this one ends here. This is word, 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 and your brain understands it. But in terms of the sounds themselves being strung together and how they sound, like what's connected to what, if we think about this, so let's say if we had prob and lum as two separate words, well, the B and the L, right, that's a cluster, bull, bull, bull. Which is kind of a weird thing. We don't usually think of this like between words, but we know B and L is a cluster. So saying like problem seems kind of weird. It's like we're breaking the cluster. Like, why would you break it that way? So if I say, let's say I want to emphasize, and you're not understanding what I'm saying. It's like, okay, no, listen, we have a problem. We have a problem. Okay, that B and the L is going to be together because they're a cluster. Okay, you're not going to split the cluster. Okay, I'm not going to say we have a problem. Like, it's technically possible to do that, but it's not common. Again, that's only in very clear emphasis. Like, somebody might kind of break it that way, but it kind of, the reason why we might break it there in that clearly emphasized way, like we have a problem, is because it can make it sound even stronger by breaking the cluster. In the flow of normal speech, you would never do that. Okay, this is just a very, very special edge case where I just want to mention it because maybe you'll hear somebody breaking it sometimes, but normally, no, we're not going to say problem. You're going to say problem. So it sounds like the B and the L are together. Problem. Same thing with figure. Okay, so if we're saying we're not going to say figure, right? Now, yes, there's a Y there between the g and the So it's actually, I wouldn't even say a Y between, because it's your, right? And this is another reason why it's okay to look at Y and W as a semi-vowel, because the g, right, consonants like to connect to vowels, but I like to call them consonants anyway. There's just special consonants that have special properties. Figure, gear. They flow very nicely. That g and that y can sort of come into its own little cluster. Gear, figure. If we try to say figure, now it sounds like we have to intentionally break it. Figure. See, I can't flow as well. But if I say figure, it just, the mechanics of the mouth between those two sounds flows out a lot more easily. I don't have to intentionally try to separate them. It just still sounds like it flows. Figure instead of figure. See, that breaks it. So I hope that makes sense. I was doing shadowing with one of your videos, and the sentence was, "It's about time you get here." So I just want to know why he's getting so caught. Yeah, I've got this question before. Things. Short version, it doesn't matter too much. It should be got. Yes, that's a good question. It should be got. Now, when I said the sentence, I said it very naturally. I wasn't thinking of grammar or anything like that. It naturally came out as get. So there's a reason for that. It should be got. And the reason why it should be got, not because it's past tense, because it would be subjunctive. However, see, if we get into splitting the grammatical hairs, as we say, splitting hairs, and which splitting hairs is a phrase we have to mean like we're looking so closely at something that we're making a difference between things that doesn't really matter, right? It might be technically accurate, but it doesn't matter. If we try to split the grammatical hairs, so to speak, we could go in and explain how, okay, this is this and that's that, and it's completely irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It's not going to help you. But it feels all right, okay? And we always want to come at it from a feeling. And get is already complicated, so I don't expect you to feel this right now. But if I say it's about time you got here, to me, it feels like, even though it's not past tense, what it feels like is like, okay, so this is the context. So let's say I'm waiting. I'm sitting here, I'm waiting, and you're supposed to be here at 2. Okay, I'm like, yeah, well, it's 2:30. You're still not here. Okay, and then finally you arrive, right? And so I'm kind of annoyed, and I say, well, it's about time you get here. Okay, now if I use got, to me, what it feels like, it doesn't matter what the grammar actually says, what it feels like is I'm pointing to the moment that just passed when you arrived. It feels like past tense, even though it's not. Usually the subjunctive doesn't do that. Like if I say, I would go if I wanted to, that wanted is not past tense. It looks like past tense. It's subjunctive. That doesn't feel like the past tense. But in this case, with get and got, it does actually feel like the past tense, even though it's technically not. So it's a weird little case. It's a weird case. That's the main point here. But if I use get, now it feels, which again, it doesn't matter what the grammar says. To me, now it feels like, instead of pointing to the moment that just passed, that when you arrived, it's like now in the present moment, your arrival has happened. So it's like all one big moment, like, okay, now you're here, now we're together, now we can, go do the thing we're going to do. And so it feels like everything is present tense, like, okay, you are here now, right? And it's this little subtle shift in feeling. I wouldn't worry about it here. I really wouldn't worry about it here. Again, going into the grammatical details, which on this point actually confuses me, to be honest. It's not going to help you that much. And I could easily probably spend like 45 minutes to an hour just like trying to dig into that. It's not going to help very much. It doesn't matter. Just chalk it up to a special case. And chalk it up to, that's a phrase we have, to chalk it up to, right? Chalk it up. Oh my God. Something. Chalk it up to something. That just means take the stuff we're talking about and like the how do we even explain this? It's weird because I can feel it. I'm just like, how do I put this into words? Chalk it up to. Let's see. To attribute some outcome or result to some specific cause, especially one that mitigates one's own responsibility or culpability. So, so the basic definition would be basically just like, say this is the result. Like it's chalk it up to this. Chalk it up to it being a special case. So because it's a special case, that's why this is happening. Basically, that's what chalk it up to would mean here. Anyway. Things. How does Italki work? I saw a link in the description. So Italki, basically for a student, you go there and you sign up for classes. If you use my link, it's for a referral link we will both get. I think it's $10 in Italki credits or something. And so how Italki works, one Italki credit equals $1. So you, like, say you want to take classes with somebody, you don't have to use US dollars. It's like they'll convert it, whatever your currency is, into the amount of Italki credits that would equal that many dollars. So let's say you have euros, right? And you go to Italki and you want to take a class with somebody. Okay, so they're going to take your euros, convert them into the amount of Italki credits that equal that many dollars. That would be the exchange between euros and dollars. And then you use those Italki credits on the platform to schedule your class. So let's say a teacher charges $10 for a class. So you would, when you schedule your class, it will line up 10 Italki credits for the class. After the class is over, you as the student confirm that the class was done, and okay, yes, we had the class, right? To tell the platform the teacher was there and he taught me and whatever, he or she. And then Italki will then release those credits from your account into the teacher's account. That's how they get paid. And then depending on where that person is and how they're, what currency they use, they will then take those Italki credits and convert them, like cash them out once or twice a month into their own currency. So Italki is like a middle in terms of the currency thing. So your currency exchanges Italki credits, teacher gets the credits after the class, they exchange it to their credits or to their currency. That's how the payment works. How the classes work is, as I said, you find a teacher, you sign up for a class, you attend the class, right? Teacher teaches you. You confirm it afterwards. Technically, you don't have to, but it's always a good practice to confirm it, because otherwise the teacher can't get those credits until you confirm it. And it will auto confirm after, I think, like 3 days or something, but it's just nice to confirm it for the teacher. So you confirm it and then you're done, right? Many teachers offer packages where you can get like 5 to 10 or however many they set. I always do 5. So you can get like 5 classes at once that you can all schedule at once, or you can choose to schedule them later. It doesn't matter. Some teachers offer a discount if you buy a package, which I think only makes sense. I've seen teachers that don't offer a discount and I'm like, this is pointless. So yeah, that's basically how it works. You go, you get taught, money gets transferred between accounts, and you learn, ideally. Now that's for the teacher platform. Italki also, you can find language exchange partners for free. They have, which I haven't been very active on the like using the site, not as a teacher. I haven't done much with that over the last few years, but they have like a big community where you can like write in your notebook or whatever, and a native speaker from the community might, like check it, or you can ask questions to the community and they'll try to answer your questions. And so it's a really nice community platform where you can, practice your language, find language exchange partners, or if you want to pay a teacher to get, classes, or just informal tutoring, just like conversation practice, you can find teachers that offer that. So it's kind of like this sort of all-in-one language exchange / teaching site that you can learn from. And I have heard that some teachers aren't that great. So, there's reviews, and I would probably check the reviews first, but, yeah, it is what it is. I think generally it's a pretty good site. How would you pronounce Jamaica? Like that, pronounce, or sorry, like pronounce. Yes, good. Correction of your typo on pronounce. Yeah, Jamaica. So it's May, Jamaica. So there's 2 schwas, J-ka, and then May in the middle, Jamaica. Not Jamaica. It is to inform versus informing. That depends on what you're saying. And welcome, Kingdom of Knowledge. It depends. So if I say this letter is to inform you that you are behind with your bill. Okay, you didn't pay your bill. So that sounds very formal in that particular context, right? This letter is to inform you. The purpose of this letter is to inform you that blah, blah, blah. If I say informing, I say he's not informing me of what's going on. It just depends on the grammar of the sentence. They both exist. Could you look at the Britney Spears song Mannequin and tell me if you can hear what she's saying? I have trouble catching the first few verses or so because the vocals are distorted, and I'd like to know if a native speaker might have the same difficulty. Alrighty. Mannequin. YouTube. Get my headphones. See, notice how I said that? I said headphones. Phones. It's not the way we normally say it. I said it in a special way, you know, to sound a certain way. It sounds kind of playful. Okay, so Britney Spears Mannequin. Bam. All right. And I'm looking at what, just like the first few verses. Okay, let's see. Is my thing on? I hear no audio. Do I have this? I know that's working. Is this working? Okay, so now the speaker's plugged in and turned on. I'm not getting any audio. That's not what I want. Audio. Oh, that's why. Okay, 1 second. Sounds. Playback. You are not a speaker, so you will go away. Headphones. Okay. There we go. And that shouldn't have affected my speaker, but if you guys no longer hear me, please let me know. This should still be working. Okay. So start of the song. Okay, yeah, it is very difficult. Something like, I don't know, the first thing is like, oh, something. I'm going to say may, my. It's okay. Around this, maybe, and then who wants me. So it's okay and who wants me is very clear. The other two phrases are not very clear. I get things, everything I wanted. I think I want it. I get things, everything I want it. So it might not be the exact words, but it's something like that. I want it my own way. On your time, gold mine, something skies. My back glass. Dresses, X's. I can't out myself. I'm just doing without. Yeah, so I can see why you're having trouble there. Some of it I'm not completely sure about, but most of that I can understand pretty clearly. Yeah. Anyway. I have been to America versus I went to America. What is the difference between these two sentences? Okay, well, the short version, I went to America. Okay, the simple past, the purpose of the simple past is to talk about a specific event in the past, right? Think the timeline. So let's say this is now, this is over here's tomorrow, this is yesterday, okay? So let's say I went to America. It's a point in the past on the timeline, right? So now it could be past continuous or just past simple. It doesn't matter, right? Just like right now I am speaking. It's happening now, so it's fine. A point in the past, okay? So I went to America. That happened. If you say I have been to America, that statement, that's a special use of the present perfect where you went to America. Yes, that happened at some point, but that's not what you're talking about. You're not talking about the time you went to America and what you did. You're talking about the fact that at some point in the past, we don't care when, at some point in the past, you went to America, Now you are not in America, but you have the experience, right? That experience continues. This is a special use of the present perfect. Like if I say, I have read this book 3 times, obviously I read it once, I read it twice, I read it 3 times, and those 3 readings continue with me, right? It happened 3 times in the past, but it's still connected to the present, because that's my experience. So when you use the present perfect like this, you're not talking about the specific event. You're talking about the experience that started at that time and still continues to the present because you're still alive. Once you die, obviously, that's the end. Like, it's not connected to the present anymore because you're dead. And then we would have to switch to the past perfect. He had been to America many times, right? Because now you're not alive. So, and I know it's very confusing for a lot of English learners. It's one of the difficult points between, okay, present perfect, simple past, but that's the basic idea. So I hope that's clear enough. And we have this to inform versus informing thing. I already answered that. As I mentioned earlier, do not repost the same comments. Do not spam comments. I will kick you. Since you are a different person, this is your warning. I will give everybody 1 warning. That's fine. At some point, I'm going to need a moderator. I think David should be the moderator. David's usually here, and I think would be a perfect moderator. So let me know. I don't think I quite need a moderator yet, but at some point I probably will. Can I get away with pronouncing regularly, like regularly, or even regularly in fast speech? Yes, you can. More clearly enunciated, regularly. That's fully enunciated, but yes, I do it regularly, or regularly, so or I think the one is a little hard for me to say, but it will probably come out that way sometimes. So we're kind of like just condensing that 4 syllables into 3 syllables. Hey everyone, hey Josh, I'm super late. That's okay. We're here. Although also keep in mind the time. We have less than an hour at this point. Well, I might go to 2:30 maybe, so we have a little more than an hour, but somewhere. Remember, we're trying to keep these a little shorter. Okan, welcome, new person. What do you think about associate? Okay, so the word associate, or was it associate or associate? Because one's a noun, one's a verb. It differs depend on the accent, as you know, yet in my opinion, British one sounds more natural. What do you think? Thanks. Well, to me, obviously, the American pronunciation would sound more natural because I'm an American speaker. Now, with this word, so if I use, let's see, again, the stress pattern is going to change. There's going to be some differences depending on if it's a noun or a verb. I assume we're talking about the verb. But regardless, let's say we'll just keep it simple. We'll say the verb, right, which is to associate. Okay. Now, Americans will say, and it doesn't matter. Maybe some people only use one of these, but I've heard the same person use different pronunciations. It's a free variation. It doesn't matter. Okay. Americans will say associate with 2 S's. We'll say associate, where that C becomes an SH sound. Let's see. Yeah. So there's those 2. Now, I want to say there's another one, but like that doesn't work. So that C can either be an S sound or an SH sound. We use both of them. I'm pretty sure British people would use the SH one. And then if it's the noun, right, you can either say associate, right, he's my associate, or associate, he's my associate. So same thing. It's just we do a little bit of a change with the end there. So yeah, and same thing with, say, grocery. Both are fine. It doesn't matter. Just pick one or whichever one comes out. I use both. Okay, associate for the verb, associate for the verb. Whichever one happens to come out is whichever one I use. I use both of them. It does not matter. Great question. I've heard associate and associate. Okay. Okay, so we're changing the end there. Remember, the end is going to be the difference between the noun and the verb. But yes, the S and the SH. Good. Could you talk a little bit about the transition from Y to R and why are you here? I'm having trouble reducing R. Well, it's very simple to reduce R. Right, R will potentially, sometimes maybe it could reduce to a schwa. It's a special case, but usually R just reduces to So instead of saying plus and blending them, saying R, you drop the part and you just do a vowel, Now with the Y before it, okay, so Y ends in the I diphthong, which the end of the I diphthong is I. Sounds kind of like E. But just like, right, as I was saying earlier, when we go from, which I guess you weren't here earlier, but when we go from E or I, which would be the A or I diphthongs, the end position of those diphthongs, we go from E or I into any other vowel, we get a small Y because we're close enough to the Y that it creates the illusion that there's this little tiny Y there. So when we say Y and R, there's actually two ways to do this, which we're going to talk about. But when we go from Y to R, if we just use the basic linking rule, you're going to say wire. So it's going to sound like, I spell that right? Yeah, wire, 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 wire. Now, you can also R color I. The I diphthong can be R colored. It doesn't have to be. You can always put a small Y between the I and the Again, a small Y. It's not ire. No, it's ire. We can tell it's not R colored because they sound kind of separate. Ire. But you can R color it and say ire. So we're not letting the tongue come up to sort of get too close to that Y. We're keeping a little more control and going like ire. So like Ireland. Or I could say Ireland. Okay, so there's two ways. It doesn't matter. I recommend using the small Y link because it's easier. But if for you it's easier to do the R colored I, then do that instead. So you can either say wire with a small Y, or you can say wire. If that's too difficult for you, just use a small Y. It doesn't matter. But yeah, that's all it is. Okay, is it possible to just get rid of the R altogether and say why you here and still sound natural? No, that will sound very informal, possibly uneducated, but definitely informal. I say, why you here? Yeah, informal for sure. And when I say informal, I mean like really informal, because remember, American culture as a whole is relatively less formal, in my opinion, than many other cultures, even like British culture. So it's not just like language to language, it's also like English speaking culture to English speaking culture. We're generally, we do have formality, we do have politeness, we do have this and that, whatever. But in general, compared to other cultures, American culture is pretty relaxed as a whole. And so this, even considering that we are kind of informal and kind of relaxed overall, this would still sound very informal because it sounds like an intentional breaking of the grammar. And usually when you intentionally break the grammar, it's going to sound either slangy, which is very informal, or uneducated, depending. This one might sound uneducated, but it mostly just sounds informal, like really informal. The question was about the pronunciation of TP as in teleport. Not the TP sound combination. Doesn't make any sense. What was that original question? Finn, where is Finn? Finn. There it is. When you pronounce letters next to each other like TP, the question was about the pronunciation of TP as in teleport, not the TP sound combination. This doesn't make any sense to me. Because the first question, maybe just the way you worded it, it clearly sounds to me like we're talking about T and P together. But then here, when you're trying to clarify, teleport does not have TP. Like there's a T in it and there's a P in it, but it's not TP. Like I don't get the question. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like you mean like the pronunciation of the T and the pronunciation of the P in a word that has a T and then a P as two separate sounds? Because if that's what you're asking, that is not the way to ask that question. It's just very confusing. But again, it's based on the stress. So in a word like teleport, remember there's primary stress and secondary stress. Secondary stress is not as important, but it does. I don't think I've noticed any exceptions to this. So maybe there's some exceptions. I've noticed that the secondary stress will keep some of the aspiration. We don't want it to be as clearly aspirated because it's secondary stress, right? We don't want it to sound as strong as the primary stress. So in teleport, the primary stress is on the te, and then port is not a stress. It's not teleport, right? It's teleport. So you can still hear that. It's not teleport, port. That's like a little too like happy. So it's going to be between like a weak P and a strong P because that secondary stress. So teleport, port. You can still hear a little bit of that breath. It's not like teleport, port. So yeah. Hopefully that answers your question. I'm really confused by this whole thing at this point with the T and P thing. So whatever, hopefully that fixes it. Portuguese goes the opposite way. It eats up the vowel before S when it starts a word. Escape becomes scape. Escape. Anyway, and both especially and especially would be pronounced without the first vowel, only an S. That sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah. Although I would also imagine the Portuguese speaker saying, so instead of saying escape, you'd probably say like scapey. I need to, I don't even know what you do with the D there, but I need to scapey. That sounds very Portuguese to me, like a Portuguese accent. Because you see the E and you want to say the E, but it's a silent E. How do you say interesting? Interesting, and yeah. Some other words like probably and many others I don't remember. My question is informal short. Okay, yeah. So good. No, not informal. So the word interesting has like 3 or 4 pronunciations. It just depends. It doesn't matter. Fully enunciated, it would be interesting. That can reduce to interesting, right? Because we have NT plus vowel, which doesn't always work inside of a word, but it very commonly does. It's usually between words, but it will commonly work inside a word. So instead of saying inter, you can say inner. That's one reduction. So interesting. The T and the R, like we were talking about with train, can actually blend into CHR. The R, again, are consonant, not vowel. So if we say, we can say interesting with a T if the speaker speaks that way, or the way I speak, I'd probably say interesting, it'd be a CH, interesting. Or instead of S, you can reduce the S to is, interesting. So that gives us more variation. So interesting. Notice that ter is not going to blend. Interesting. No, nobody would ever say it that way because that's now when we say inter, that's an vowel, and the T does not blend into CH with the vowel. That's why I say the consonant, like train, not terrain, which is a different word. So interesting, interesting with E instead of I. Let's see here. Interesting. You can also do interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah, this little word, interesting. No, scratch that one. Sounded okay in my head. I know there's more. I can't think of them right now. Oh, yeah. No, we did that. Interest. Okay, I guess that covers them. The way I used to explain this, I had it categorized, and I think I just kind of blended them all. So that's probably it. Anyway, it depends on how you say it. It doesn't matter. Probably. We can just drop one of the syllables, say probably. If you're speaking really lazily, it sounds a little more informal. If you completely drop the B's and you say probably, I'll probably be there. probably be there. You can even actually drop that L and just say like probably. I'll probably be there. Probably. Usually go from A to E with no L. That's probably the most reduced one. Only in faster speech, not super fast speech, but only like if you're speaking too slowly, you can't do that. Yeah, so I'll probably be there. Probably. I'll probably be there. Or I'll probably be there. Or I'll probably be there. Or I'll probably be there. So probably, we almost never say probably with both B's. Unless maybe it's like the one word, like, hey, are you going to the party? Probably. Like, even then, you don't have to do that, but that's when it may be more likely. So in general, the changing or reducing these words like this is not going to sound informal, but some of them, depending on how far you go, can sound informal. But again, in the flow of normal to faster speech, they're kind of just the way that we probably say them. So I notice I said probably say them. But okay, anyway, can the hour be reduced even further? Well, not the word hour with an H. Okay, that's a one-syllable content word, so be careful. And I know you're probably using that to illustrate, okay, it's pronounced hour, like the word hour with an H. But just to make sure that's clear, the word H-O-U-R does not reduce. But O-U-R, which is a function word, it's a pronoun, yes, that will reduce to R. Can it reduce further? So if I say, that's our car, that's our car, that's her car. Yep, that's her car, that's her car. If the context is very, very clear, maybe. So if you know, like if I say that's her car, and you know I'm talking about our car, it's very clear from the context, possibly we might reduce it all the way down to er. Only in that case, maybe. The problem with that is, as soon, like if I say that's her instead of that's our, now it sounds like that's her car. So we can get some conflict here. And when cases like that happen, we tend to not reduce as far as we otherwise might. And it might just be based on that context. Again, if the context is very clear, maybe you can reduce it all the way down. So the short answer, I would say no, but maybe. Maybe, if everything lines up. Us against you, what is the aim or purpose to replace we? Archaic style, cultural hint, so what has changed? We against you. What is the grammar here? Because if it were singular, if it were I, we'd say me against you. We wouldn't say I against you. That's weird. At least it sounds weird to me. So I and we are subject pronouns. And I'm trying to think, this is a case that is a little confusing. I'm trying to think if that first word is the subject, because it should be, right? It's like subject against object, I guess, or is it object against object? I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure how the grammar falls here. Let's try this. Why do I have to do that? The short, easy answer I would give here is it doesn't matter. Just speak the way natives speak. Things change over time, and we know that happens. Some of those questions are interesting and useful, but if it's just the way we speak and like there's not another version that is technically correct, like that's just how it is, and you're like, well, why is it different? Like, was it different in the past? Like, did it used to be we? It's like, maybe it was, but if that's not applicable anymore, it doesn't really matter, and I wouldn't worry about it, unless maybe you're trying to get like down to like the feeling of it, and you're like looking at the etymology and the history and trying to build like a feeling like a native has, like I do with the logical prepositions. Then those type of questions become more useful. But if it is how it is, That's just how it is. Let's see here. So against is preposition, a conjunction. We don't use it as a conjunction anymore. Anyway. Okay. 20 votes against 10, against reason, protection against burglars, to ride against the wind, the rain beat against the window, to lean against a wall, money saved against a rainy day. Ugh, yeah, that sounds a little old. A design of flowers against a dark wall. So, I mean, that would be subject against object, I guess, but that's as a background. Let's see. In competition with a racehorse running against his own record time. Comparison or contrast. A matter of reason against as against emotion. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is an obscure grammar question that I don't think matters. But I wouldn't say there's no aim. There is no aim or purpose of replacing we with us. Like that's just not. That's not the right question. It is what it is. Yeah. Anyway. Where are you at? I'm right here. I'm in my room, Steve. God, I gotta be so nosy. Maybe because I changed my background, or I don't know if that's a question, or if you're just asking since you just joined. Yeah, I moved my room around. So, when you say caring, hearing, cheering, is there that same thing that happens with the R when you link hurrai for is happening? Essentially, yes. In this case, so hurrai, that's just that links like a bridge. For can be reduced to fur also. But with caring, it's air. Hearing is ear. Cheering is ear. So it's the R colored vowels instead of just an But yeah, anytime there's an R going to a vowel, it creates this sort of bridge. So it works exactly the same way. Yeah. In the word Connecticut, what happens to the second C? Does it disappear? I've heard the word addicted with no C. So I'm confused. And yes, I gotta admit, I watch both politics and rap songs. I don't know if watching songs is grammatically correct. I do it on YouTube. So there's two questions now. Yeah. Well, I mean, technically, yeah, I guess you would be watching a music video. That's what we say. You don't watch songs. That doesn't match, but it's understandable what you mean there. So it would be like rap music videos instead of rap songs. Yeah, so in the word Connecticut. So there's a couple things happening here. Now, if I fully enunciate the word Connecticut, I would never say it that way, like ever. Like it seems unnecessary, but I have heard that there are speakers, especially from that part of the country, that fully enunciated, they pronounce the K, which to me is very strange. But apparently, at least traditionally, it's supposed to be there. Some people will say it, some people don't. But for the rest of us, who don't really care, and it's a strange long word, no offense to Connecticut, it's just a lot easier to ignore the k sound, take the e and the I, flap the D in between. So much easier. Connecticut. So that's just, it's a special case. Yes, the C, which is a K sound, the second C, does disappear. I would even say in the fully enunciated version, but again, there are people who will actually pronounce that K. So I would just recommend dropping that second C all the time. I've heard the word addicted, so like addicted, that's not even the same word. I don't. Oh, that's why you mentioned the rap songs and the politics. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine like a rapper or a hip hop artist saying like, instead of addicted, they'll say like addicted, like I'm addicted to you, or something like that. In general American English, no, never. Not in this case. Usually K and T, they'll go together, right? It could be possible that something can change with the T, or depending on the word, maybe something weird can happen. But usually a K and a T is right? Connect. Picked, past tense of picked. Like there's no problem putting them together. So we don't usually drop one of those, especially not the T. So yeah, I would blame hip hop for that. Which I feel like I'm gonna have to make like a special lesson on, like, because there's so many people who seem to be, which again, there's nothing wrong with how certain people speak. If people speak the way they speak as native speakers, I don't care if it doesn't match general American English. It's fine, right? I've said that many times. And it doesn't matter if it sounds uneducated or whatever. It is what it is for that speaker or those speakers. That's fine. There's no problem with that. But it seems like because of the popularity of hip hop and rap around the world, especially American hip hop and rap, that it is leading many English learners to think that the way to pronounce certain things is the way that they say them, when that's actually a dialectical variation and is not the way most Americans say things. And I feel kind of like I have to make a special lesson on that at some point, because I get lots of questions that are either related to that directly, or the questions are coming out of that, and you may not even know that, like, oh, okay, so it's just, like this group of people who pronounce things that way and most people don't. So it is what it is. And again, you can talk however you want to talk. Just be aware that if things can sound very informal and or uneducated from the general American perspective, like for most Americans' ears. So especially if you're in more of a formal situation, like you're trying to get a job or something, you probably, I mean, again, do what you want to do, but you probably want to speak a little bit more of that general American type sound instead of how some certain people might speak, like rappers or whatever. What are you a teacher on Italki too? Wait. Yes, I am. It would be cool to take a class done by you. Yes, I am a teacher on Italki. I teach one-on-one classes, and I am not looking for new students. And in general, I am closed off to the YouTube community, because that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to get students. Retired from Italki. I'm not retired yet. My goal is to retire from teaching once my channel reaches a certain level. And whatnot. So anyway, yeah, I don't accept people from the community because I feel it's not fair. Because there's probably plenty of people, and I actually recently, right now I'm only teaching pronunciation, and I raised my prices like $45 an hour. So obviously that's going to exclude a lot of people. But I'm sure there are still plenty of people who could pay that. But number one, I'm not looking for new students because I'm full. And even if I were looking for new students, it's like, okay, I have like one spot, and it's like, who's going to get the spot? It's like, it doesn't seem fair to say, hey guys, first person out of, 100 people who want to take this class. And it's like, oh, the first person who saw it gets it. And it's like, it just, I don't know. So yeah, I generally have it closed off to you guys because I'm not here to get students. Which you would think I would be, because that's probably what most teachers are doing. They're here to get more students and grow their thing. That's not why I'm here. There was a teacher on that that one of his class, you both have to pick a movie to watch together, and then you talk during the movie and give your opinion when the movie ends, almost like a date. Yeah, I mean, using movies and stuff can be useful, but you shouldn't waste class time. That just sounds like a lazy teacher. Like, why would you waste class time watching a movie together? Doesn't make any sense. You're basically paying them for a movie, right? Yeah. I'm too desperate. I'd 100% book that class. When I say I've been to America, I feel like I have to give more details about it. I've been to America once and blah, blah, blah. No, definitely not. And especially if you're going to do that, like I've been to America once, that's grammatically correct. If you just want to say like, okay, I've been there and it was only one time, that's fine. But if you say I've been to I've been to America once and I saw many things, now it doesn't sound grammatically correct anymore. Because the purpose of saying I've been no longer matches the rest of what you're saying, which is you're talking about the specific time you were there. So you can separate. You say I've been to America once. When I was there, I did blah, 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 blah. Then it sounds a bit better. Otherwise, you would say, like, I went to America once and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So it would be the opposite of your impression. I wouldn't mind monitoring if it would help. Well, that was a long time ago, and I caught up. Wow, guys, like, what happened? Did we lose connection and I'm not aware of it? Like, what's going on? Everything died. Arthi Bill, welcome. Sorry if I said that weird. I hear a lot of native speakers reducing some words in different ways, such as from going to, gonna, and I personally use the first one. Which one of them is appropriate? Okay, good question. It's not. Sometimes it's a question of what's appropriate, right? What sounds not super informal or not uneducated or whatever. But a lot of the time when it comes to reductions, it's not about what's appropriate, it's what happens. It's just what happens. And sometimes there's more than one thing that can happen. So fully enunciated, going to, right? I'm going to the store or I'm going to do it tomorrow. It would be the same both ways. Now, with gonna is only a reduction for going to verb, right? Going to do something. We wouldn't say I'm gonna the store. Okay, so that going to, if you're going to a location, you can't reduce it. Okay, that's one important point. But if it's going to do something, then gonna obviously is a super, super common reduction. Some teachers will tell you it's informal. It's really not. It's just a normal part of speech. Same thing with wanna. Wanna is a normal part of speech. Maybe if you're in a job interview or something, maybe use going to or want to. But even then, I mean, a lot of employers, like managers and stuff, are kind of relaxed in American culture. There's a certain line, obviously, but we can still use these types of things like, hey, boss, I'm going to go get lunch. Okay, great. Like you will hear that in American English. With going to, okay, so this is the thing where I don't want to get too much into the weeds here. Into the weeds would be like, really into the details of everything. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but to, we know, is very special. The preposition to, not the word to like the number, not TOO as in addition or also, but the preposition to. We know that it's special because since it's such a common word, to, the oo will usually reduce to, it doesn't have to, but it commonly does. And the T is very susceptible, meaning very easy to affect based on the sound before it. So if the sound before it is voiceless, it will usually stay as a T. And it's a weak T, just t. So if I say walk to the store, walk to, it's just a T. If the sound before it is voiced, it will usually change it into a D, a weak D. Okay, so in this case, with the N, you can say going to, right? And that's perfectly fine. If the sound before it is a vowel, which all vowels are voiced, so we have the voice plus it's a vowel, that opens up the ability to flap the D because now we have vowel, unstressed D vowel. And so if we say go to, we commonly will flap and say go to the store. Okay, so it's very easy to change based on what's before. It might be a T, it might be a D, it might be a flat D. Or in the case of gonna, what we're doing is we're actually doing the NT plus vowel rule, which usually doesn't happen between, wait, hold on. No, that's not what I wanted to say. Yeah, usually the N and the T have to be part of the same word for us to apply the NT plus vowel, and then the N will connect over to the vowel at the start of the next word. But with to, it's a special case. So with want to and going to, we can apply the NT plus vowel rule, and then the going changes into g for some reason, whatever. But you could say goina. I'm going to do it tomorrow. So you can keep the going and just say na, or you can reduce the oe into and say gonna. Okay, so there's a whole range of things, and all of them are fine. Whatever comes out is fine. It does not matter. They don't sound informal. They don't sound inappropriate. They're all perfectly fine. Now, there's one case, one special case that does sound very informal, and that would be I am going to, and then we'll say, because remember, it has to be a verb in this case. So I'm going to eat. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm, that's one reduction / contraction. Going to, gonna. Okay, that's another one. Now, you can reduce this. This is only for I am going to, not for any of the other, like you are or he is. Okay. You can reduce from I to, reduce it all the way down to I'm a. Okay? I'm a eat. I'm a eat right now. That sounds very informal. Okay, that's probably the most extreme reduction in the English language. Yeah, I'm gonna do it tomorrow. Okay, if you're talking to a friend, no problem, no problem. I use this in texts with my brother. It does sound very informal, can sound maybe a little bit uneducated, but if you're in an informal situation, you're talking to a friend, no problem at all, no problem. But under normal circumstances, this is one that you don't want to be throwing around. Like you can say gonna all day long. It's usually not going to matter. But I'm that one is special. So hopefully that answers the question. Yes, there's many things you can do with going to, and all of them are fine. Can I use pretty before an adverb? Yeah. So if I say, say you got here quickly, you arrived quickly, right? It only took you 2 minutes, right? Say, wow, you got here quickly. Or I could say, wow, you got here pretty quickly. Now, it might be that it's supposed to be pretty quick. You got here pretty quick, but saying pretty quickly doesn't sound bad. So I'm going to say it's okay. What if I say pretty likely? It's pretty likely. Is likely an adverb? It should be an adverb. It ends in ly. Yeah. Oh, adjective or adverb. Okay. We will likely stay home this evening. We will pretty likely stay home this evening. You could say that. Yeah, it's okay. So likely can also be an adjective. Obviously, if it's an adjective, you can, like, it's pretty likely. A likely story. It's a pretty likely story. That would work fine. Let's see. What's another adverb? It definitely wouldn't go before all adverbs. Like insanely, right? Like he's insanely strong. He's super, super strong, right? If I say like he's pretty insanely strong, it sounds kind of weird. Because insanely already sounds like a very strong word, and you say like he's pretty insanely strong. Like he's not too insanely strong, but pretty insanely strong. Like he's so insanely strong. So it kind of doesn't fit with the word. It's kind of weird. Yeah, possibly. It depends. I'm trying to think of other adverbs. Anyway, short answer, yes, but not all the time. And actually, let's see, if we go here, what kind of word is pretty? I'm sure that's several classifications, but pretty with this meaning. So obviously we don't mean that meaning. That's not informal. This is another reason I hate the dictionary. It mislabels things. Okay, so yeah, so pretty meaning quite, very, fairly, right? Her work was pretty good. The wind blew pretty hard, which is how we're using pretty here. That is an adverb, and adverbs can modify adverbs, right? They modify adjectives, verbs, and other adverbs. So, yeah. Well, yes, an adjective modifies a noun. Yeah, should work. Okay. The opposite then, yes. How frequently do you use passive voice in a casual conversation? I think passive voice would appear more predominantly on the news. It definitely is more common in the news for sure, yes, because it makes it sound like there's more distance. Passive makes it feel, obviously it's passive, it makes it feel less active, right? So if you say a man killed a man on the news, right? It sounds, which is perfectly fine, but it sounds active, like, okay, this person killed this person, when usually, I mean, especially if it's like a murder, right, usually it's like alleged, right? You don't want to like point fingers like this guy killed this guy, right? You say like, okay, a man was killed. It doesn't necessarily matter by who. Maybe you start with like, okay, a man was killed, police think the suspect is blah blah blah. So, police think, that's active, right? So there's going to be a mix, but there is more passive voice in the news. In a casual conversation, I mean, we use it if we need to use it. Like, so okay, in a casual conversation, I probably wouldn't say my car was hit by the rain. I'd probably say the rain hit my car. Like, but it also depends. Like, if I say, let's say there was a car accident, right? And I'm talking to you on the phone. I'm telling you about what happened. I say it was yesterday. I say, yeah, so I was driving and this guy hit me. Okay, so he hit my car, right? That's a very common thing. It's active. Now, if I say, oh yeah, so I was driving and I was hit by this other guy, that's also common, right? So we do use it in casual conversation. It's just, I think English in general, in like real speech, we prefer the active usually. That doesn't mean like we're not going to use the passive. It's like the passive still gets used. Like, I'm pretty sure that's passive. The passive still gets used. Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes the passive is confusing, but the point is we use it, just not all the time, not every other sentence, right? But it's perfectly fine to use the passive voice in regular speech. Yes. I was watching a movie and the main character said, "We don't." What? Either you're mishearing, or if you had subtitles, I think the subtitles were wrong, because that doesn't make any sense. Trying to think of what that would be, what that word would be. We don't. What was the context? The closest thing I can think of is cater, which sounds quite a bit different. So I would imagine that's not what it is. Yeah, I would need a context to figure out what that was, but I can pretty much guarantee that that's not what the person said, because that doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I don't know. I'm caught up. Yay. Live stream over. We're done. Go home. No. Search on YouTube. Okay, well, the only example that might pop up is number 1 from... Oh, I see. Okay. Wondering... Okay. Yeah. I've seen that somewhere before. That's some weird stuff. Yeah, like, it doesn't make any sense. I think the whole purpose of that creation, whatever that animation thing is to be creepy and probably not make much sense anyway. It doesn't mean anything. It's like if he were to say, like, hey, Gooba, we don't lick to airplane. Like, it, that's what it sounds like. I mean, two freaks does make sense, but you get the point. Like, cotton two freaks, it doesn't mean anything. If it does, it's some very obscure slang thing that I'm not aware of, so I have no idea. Definitely not a standard normal thing that anybody would say, for sure. All right, guys. So we're at 2 hours and 21 minutes. And I'm not getting any more questions. So we got to get these questions, or I'm going to go. Because, I mean, I'm definitely going to hang around for at least 7 more minutes. At most, I will be here for 37 more minutes, and I'm going to cut it off. So if you have any questions, get them now. Get them now. Hola. Sorry, def A or B or def 8. What? I don't get the what? Def A or B of def 8? That doesn't make any sense. I don't know what you're saying. I just realized what this could possibly mean. Oh, okay. Is it something racist? Because I figured it'd be something racist. Yeah, so you don't have to explain it or mention it. I don't care. And yeah, just, yeah. Sergio, hey. Welcome. We need the questions, guys. Or I can talk about falling into the next sound, like I mentioned earlier. I have dates here. I want to eat a date. You guys know what dates are? You probably know what dates are. So these thingies, this is a date. Yeah, they're super sweet and delicious. We call those, it's a date. Just like you go on a date with somebody, these, same word, but that's a food. Sorry, I pasted it. Well, okay, yeah, paste. Pasted a link. It was probably censored, but it is just dictionary.com /word. Oh, I see. Yeah, YouTube won't let you put links. It'll just not send it. I see. Anyway, that's 2 words versus those are 2. Yeah, people get mad if I choose a second. So we've talked about this, and you don't have to add one there. You could just say choose the second. Grammatically, it's supposed to be those are two words, right? Like those are two words that are interesting. Would people get mad if I choose the second? Well, the second one is correct. So the grammar police would want you to say the second one. But because grammar is slowly changing, you actually hear both of these, but especially the first one very commonly. That's two words. Now, we wouldn't say that's two words that is. That would sound really bad. We would still keep the plural after that. It's just, like that's, or maybe this is, where it's sort of becoming one thing instead of that, like those are. It's just becoming that is. So that's two words that are interesting. So you're asking, so the non-grammar police would be like most people, the average person. No, both of these sound perfectly fine in real speech. It's just that those are, it's because it's correct. It's still fine. It doesn't sound, super formal, or it doesn't sound like the way people used to speak. It still sounds perfectly fine. This is a case where like the actual correct plural version, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the incorrect singular version is becoming much more normalized and is a very common way to speak also. So you can use either one. It doesn't matter in this case. If you always want to use the correct way, just use the correct way. What's your favorite Spanish accent? I always like when people ask me this. My favorite Spanish accent is a Portuguese accent in Spanish. It's the most beautiful thing on the planet. But for an actual Spanish accent, probably Argentina, the Argentinian accent, followed by the Spain, which I know there's some variation in Spain, but like I guess sort of like the standard Spain accent, like say probably from like Madrid, and which is funny because when I started learning Spanish, I hated the sound of Castilian Spanish. Now it's like one of my favorites. And then after that, it would probably be like any accent that instead of saying like está, you say like eta, where you kind of drop that S. Like that sounds pretty cool to me too. But my home is basically Mexican because it's kind of like, which I know some people disagree with this, like some native speakers, but I've heard from a lot of native Spanish speakers that the Mexican accent seems sort of like a sort of a neutral accent in a way. It's like not, certain sounds don't tend to get dropped, and it tends to be kind of clear. And there's obviously like a lot of media that comes out of Mexico, especially with like Telemundo and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I focused on when I was learning Spanish. So yeah, that's like my home base. Okay, so do you think watching Fox 4 is helping in learning an accent? I started watching it last day. So last day would be yesterday, or last night. I think it might help your ears to pick up more of the details of accent alone. So I don't know what you mean by Fox 4. Is it like a TV channel? Start watching Fox 4 Dallas. Okay, yeah, so it's a TV channel then, because I'm a big fan of Dallas Cowboys. I see. Okay, so that would be the local Fox station in Dallas. Here in San Diego, it's Fox 6. So it varies where you go. Fox is the company, and then the specific channel just depends on where you are. So you could just call it Fox. Now, there's further clarification there. Because you said Fox 4, that actually works out well in this particular case, because there's also Fox News, which is its own channel and its own thing. very conservative news network. So when you say Fox 4, obviously you're not talking about Fox News, you're talking about the local news in Dallas. Now, are you talking about watching the news itself or that channel and just like watching the shows that come on that channel? Because if it's the news in particular, I mean, there's nothing wrong with watching the news. It's good input. But again, like we were saying earlier, there's tends to be more passive voice. The language isn't necessarily, it doesn't completely match everyday speech. And so it's good input. Like, I'm not saying don't watch the news, but the simple answer is yes, you should be watching native programming. If you're trying to learn American English, watch an American station or many stations or TV shows or whatever. It doesn't matter. Now, the only thing in your case, whatever comes up on that channel, cartoons and all that, yes, I would generally recommend that. The only thing that I would say is, because it's Dallas, I don't know the exact accent in Dallas, but Dallas is in Texas, and Texas is where the Southern accent kind of starts. Some people don't really have much of an accent. Some people do. There's like a Texan accent. And so like, say if you're watching the news, there's some people who might have kind of an accent. Or if you're watching like some sort of local programming that's not the news, you might hear some sort of accent. But if it's just like a cartoon or a regular TV show that is just showing on that channel, then it's probably not going to be a specific accent. It's gonna sound neutral. So keep that in mind. There might be a little bit of an accent thing in the news, but outside of that, yes, it's watch it as much as you can. If there's anything that's boring, don't force yourself to sit there and watch it, right? You don't have to sit there watching a TV station all the time. Go watch some other movie or TV show or something on Netflix, whatever it is. Like, get as much input as you can, yes. Whether that's for your pronunciation, your listening, your vocabulary, right? Whatever it is, input from native sources as much as possible. Go for it, yes. People from Dominican Republic drop the S, I think. Yes, you do. Or yes, they do. I don't know if you're from Dominican Republic. Well, you said I think, so I guess you're not. But Maguaz, yes, welcome. Yeah, I have one of my Spanish partners back in the day. He's from the Dominican Republic, and he speaks that way. When he was speaking with me, he would kind of enunciate a bit because I was a beginner. But as I got a little bit better, he kind of started to drop it and speak a little more naturally. So yeah, I think in Cuba they also do that. It's sort of like I know it's like a Caribbean thing, but I've also heard, I'm pretty sure, which I guess I should know this. I think Shakira is from Colombia. Could be very wrong on that. Yeah, Colombia. And I've heard, I don't know if it's an actual part of the Colombian accent, but I've heard sometimes in her songs, like when she's doing La Bicicleta with, oh, come on, why am I dropping? I'm forgetting his name right now. Carlos Vives. I hear her speaking like that, where she actually drops the S. And so I don't know if that's just because like she's singing with him and he speaks that way, and it's like, a subtle subconscious effect, or if that's how she usually speaks. Because I don't usually listen to her speaking in Spanish. I listen to her singing. So maybe I think Colombians might also do that as well. But I know it's definitely a Caribbean thing. In your opinion, which option is the best to improve your pronunciation watching videos with lower speed or faster speed? It depends. There's different techniques. If you're shadowing, right, so for your pronunciation, if you're going to be shadowing, like, okay, obviously if you slow it down, you can notice things more, but also like if you slow it down too much, it might get kind of choppy. And so, I mean, it's not perfect, but if you're trying to shadow, you're trying to like actively match something, slowing it down is a very good technique, especially if you're doing slow to fast shadowing. So you're not just trying to constantly shadow it slowly, right? You're using that as an opportunity to make sure like you hear all the sounds and make sure like, okay, my tongue is going from here to here to here, and then maybe you increase it by like 0.25 or 0.5. So it's a little faster. And then you try to shadow it at that speed, right? So you can say that faster and get used to moving through all those positions faster. So it just depends on what you're doing and what techniques you're using. What I would say is that if you go faster than normal speed, like if you go up to like 1.5 or 2 times speed, for your pronunciation, that's not going to do anything. Like I would not, because all you're doing is artificially speeding up the way that they said it. So even like it's not even going to match super fast English pronunciation, because like if they're speaking normal speed and you put it at 2 times, all you're doing is getting like a 2 times version of normal speed, which is not the way that we would normally speak if we were trying to speak that fast. So that's not going to do anything for your input of pronunciation. It's not going to do anything for your output of pronunciation. Putting it at higher than normal speed, 1.5 or 2, if you put it there, or even 1.25, that can help your listening, but it's not going to help your pronunciation. How do you learn foreign languages? Any hacks, tricks? I have a whole book about that. I wrote a whole book. How to learn a language. I wonder where if my book is going to come up on the first page. Let's see. Probably not. Nope, sad me. Does not pop up on the first page. That's stupid. Okay. There it is. Okay. Why would you do this? Somebody gave me 4 stars. Everybody else gave me 5 stars. I don't even check my ratings usually. Okay. So this link, that'll take you to my book. This is a gigantic topic that obviously like I could just sit here talking for like the next 8 hours about. That book contains, I mean, I've thought of a couple other things and techniques or learned a couple new things since I published that book, which was a few years ago, but like 99% of what I know or what I have sort of gotten from other people and synthesized and, put all into one source. It's pretty much all in that book. So there you go. And yes, there are many hacks and tricks. But what I will say is there, as much as it pains me to say so, there is no one best way to learn a language. There are many very good ways to learn a language. But there is no one best way to learn a language. And it depends on your goals. It depends on your preferences. It depends on, goals and preferences pretty much sum it up. But like, for example, there's input and output. You can have an input-based path. You can have an output-based path. Obviously, a lot of people in language learning talk about input, especially like polyglot Steve Kaufman. But then on the other hand, you have polyglots like Benny Lewis, who speaks from day one. He's all about like trying to reach a conversational level in a 3-month period, like in a pretty short time, which he usually succeeds at. It's perfectly fine, perfectly possible. Because that's his goal. His goal is to, well, back in the day, I don't know what he's doing so much now, but he was traveling a lot and he would go to, say, Indonesia, and then he'd only be there for 3 months. And he'd say, okay, well, I'm here. I'm going to try to learn the language to be able to communicate conversationally, not perfectly conversationally. And he would usually succeed at that mission. So it's totally possible to get up and running conversationally in a language within a short period of time. But it's also higher energy, higher stress, right? It's not the best approach for everybody. But if you need to, say, go to Japan next month, there are techniques from the output-based approach that would probably work very, very well to help get you as far as you need to go before next month when you leave. So you can sort of, based on that situation, it'll give you the best chance. Where if you take an input-based approach, which tends to be more slower, more over time, but lower energy, lower stress, that's more, say, if you have like, okay, you're going to go to Japan next year, an input-based approach might be better, especially if you're a busy person and, which Benny Lewis is also a busy person and he still did that. But if you don't want all that extra stress from constantly trying to speak the language and make corrections and, or make mistakes, get corrections, all this stuff, you want sort of an easier, smoother path. and you have the time, take an input-based approach, right? So it depends on your goals, your preferences, all these different things. You can mix and match them too. Those are just the two pillars. I talk about all that in the book. So, I don't know, but I sometimes get to think the British accent turns words ending with into yes. Okay. So in British English, they do not have like the vowels, even the colored vowels. So the r, or, okay, they are not r sounds. They're spelled the same, but they're not r's. They don't pronounce the r's. So star is star. Water is water. Water, right? It's more, I don't know if it's exactly a schwa, but it definitely sounds a lot like a schwa. That's part of the British accent. One of the things that makes the American accent sound American is that we actually pronounce all those R's, right? So we say water, star. It's called rhoticity in linguistics. Rhoticity, in case you want to look that up. Definitely don't have to, but if you're curious. So American English is fully rhotic, we would say, as an adjective. Do New Yorkers also change? It depends. Like my grandma's from New York, she doesn't do that. But definitely there are accents from the New York area, especially like if you're maybe from like, and I don't want to mislabel certain places, but off the top of my head, like maybe Brooklyn or I mean, even like the Boston, Massachusetts, like from Boston, right? They have certain chains. Get in the car. They don't say get in the car. Get in the car, right? And it's not going to be like exactly like British necessarily. Like a British person would say, get in the car, car. And then somebody from Boston might say, get in the car, not car. Okay, so it's not going to sound exactly the same necessarily, but what happened historically is, right, because when the settlers, you know, the original colonizers came to the United States, they were all British, right? And so it's not just like, hey, we're in a new land, we're going to speak like this now. No, they still sounded British, right? And so over time, there was the development of the American accent, which is, you know, again, there's little changes here and there, but most people across the country sound pretty much the same. But in certain areas of the Northeast, right, because New York obviously has a very, very long history, there are certain little regional accents that didn't completely make that change into full rhoticity, where they pronounce all the R's, the R vowels. And so that still exists in some dialects in the Northeast part of the country. I think even like Bernie Sanders, I think he's from Vermont. I know he's a senator for Vermont. I don't know if he's actually from Vermont, but he kind of has that type of sound too. So it's that general north, like really northeast area. Not everybody sounds like that just because they're from there, but there are many speakers who have that. I heard a New York man saying over and over and over again. It's like over and over and over again, right? We've been over this. We've been over this, right? Yeah, it kind of gives a little bit more of that New Yorker sound. I don't know why in the last over he did it like an American pronunciation. That's something that can also happen. So we've been over and over and over again. There's all kinds of weird things. Most Americans don't have the they have the and so maybe in the particular way that he speaks, right, he's linking it without the R, like over and over, right? And then that last one, because it's the last over, maybe as a form of subtle emphasis or something, he actually pronounces the There, weird things like that can happen. It doesn't matter. That's just like the speech of one person or a sub-dialect of, you know, whatever. Like, there's nothing wrong with it, but you don't have to care about that. That's not standard speech, right? Unless you're trying to learn that specific accent, in which case I can't help you with that. I don't know why in the last I don't think we did that. Actually, after I watched the Cowboys game, the casters had a thick Texan accent. Bob's Burgers. I noticed characters had more of a neutral accent, so I noticed it. Well, good. Yeah, so the contrast can help you a bit there. That's good. A New Yorker, yes. Maybe because there was a vowel after the sound. Well, I mean, with over again, there's also a vowel there, right? Over again, over again. So you say over. I mean, I guess you could say oven, but we wouldn't say it like over and over, and it's gonna sound kind of like in. Over and over and over, whatever. Can't wait to read it. Good. I'm from DR, Dominican Republic, and actually we don't drop the S all the time, most of the time in casual conversation. ¿Cómo te está? ¿Qué te hace? Well, yeah, so we're talking about dropping the S like before the T, like está. And I know obviously like you can go all the way and drop the E part too, like you did here, like como tú estás, right? But I also hear like como está. So you actually say the E, drop the S, and say ta, como está. But obviously, if you say hace, you're not going to drop that S sound. It's a C, letter C, but it's an S sound. So yeah, it's not dropping all S's, obviously. Do you find it weird? I need the word it there. Do you find it weird when someone keeps using too many adverbs in a sentence? Does it sound too formal and awkwardly poetic? Like for example, like I would need an example. I don't know. Probably. I mean, it's probably going to stand out. But I mean, it depends on what we need. Like if I say he quickly and calmly walked across the elegantly painted elegantly formed lawn. Like, I mean, yeah, it's kind of starting to sound a little, I wouldn't necessarily say poetic, but it's starting to sound a little bit like it's very descriptionary, I guess, where it's almost like you're reading a novel that has like, you know, these long descriptions and stuff. And so it kind of doesn't necessarily sound like regular speech, but again, it depends. Because we would probably just say like he quickly walked across the lawn. Like when I was in like the elegantly formed lawn, like, okay. Kay. Hello, Kay. Welcome. Could you teach me how to pronounce the word borrow? Like that there, we're done. I thought it's, oh God, stupid IPA, borrow. But I heard someone say you can pronounce it like borrow. You don't have to do bar, our colored vowel. Oh, I see borrow. Okay. I'm going to keep this simple. The way we pronounce borrow is borrow. Okay, it's your question is based on an illusion. Okay, the R's, whether it's an R consonant or an R vowel, especially the R vowels, they're what I like to call a bridge sound. Okay, so they're going to sound equally connected to what is before it and to what is after it, without lengthening anything, unless you have two R's. Like if you go from to then you could lengthen the R. But so when we say borrow, if I were to transcribe this, which actually I can't transcribe this because I can't underline. Is there any way I can show this to you? I can't share my screen. Oh, I can write it on a piece of paper. If I had a piece of paper, 1 second. Okay. See, the English Hacks phonetic transcription method is partially designed for cases like this. I tried to take this into consideration when I was creating my transcription process. And it looks like you're trying to use the IPA, maybe like with that A with a thing over it. I generally don't recommend the IPA. I've given reasons for that. I'm going to make a lesson on that at some point. But it's problematic. Okay, the way that I would transcribe the word borrow. So we have borrow. Okay, we're going to say borrow. How do I do this? Borrow. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. So something like this. All right. Now, the first thing I feel I have to mention, notice I'm using AW. Maybe this is backwards too. I don't know, but I'm using AW. That's because some teachers, they use AH for ah and AW for all. I do not use ah and all. I use the cot merger, which is much easier, and more and more natives are using that as their natural way to speak. So for various reasons, I strongly recommend you use the cot merger. Just use one sound, not ah and ah. Use ah. Okay. That aside, I've talked about that before. I have lessons on that. You can go watch the lesson on that. So in my transcription, AH is for ah, like cat, and AW is for ah. Okay. So here we have ba, but it's R colored. Okay. So it's not just ba row, it's bar. But then the R is also connected to the O because so it's going to sound like bar, and it's also going to sound like row at the same time. Borrow. Okay. So what you're trying to do here, it looks like you either have like two R's or you have like where it's like ba row. Well, that wouldn't be right. That would be ba row. Ba row. Like I have to intentionally try to separate out the R color R into two different sounds, and nobody would say that. It's bar. Okay. But it's also row at the same time. So I guess that would match kind of the first one. I don't know why anybody would try to say it like ba row, because that doesn't make any sense. Yes. Hopefully that answers your question. But if you heard someone say it like that, I have no idea why they would say it like that. Need to borrow. Need to borrow. Yeah, because even if we try to separate out, like if I try to emphasize the syllables, right? Like sometimes what we'll do to be very, very clear, especially if we're like annoyed, we'll actually separate all the syllables and the words and everything. So I say like, I don't like it, right? And even if there's more than one syllable, like I don't like something, right? We might do that. If I were to do that with borrow, it wouldn't be borrow. Like, can I borrow your car? Maybe we could do that, but probably we're going to say, can I borrow? Borrow. So the R is actually going to be right in the middle at the end of the first break and bridging through to the second break. That's going to be the most likely way that we're going to say that because it bridges the two. Are you more likely to pronounce conjure as conjure? Conjure. Definitely no. Why would anybody say it? We're not reducing it. It's a stressed syllable. It's not con. It's conjure. Thanks, got it. So you pronounce it like bar, like car, row. Yes. Yeah, so caro, borrow. Yes, exactly. Caro, borrow. Caro, borrow. Perfect. All right. We're just about out of time. We got like 6 minutes. So, any other last minute questions? No problem, Kay. Glad I could help. I know it's kind of a long explanation, but I do that sometimes. I want to make sure things are clear. Plus, I always get animated whenever I see the APA. And like, if I think there's some sort of misunderstanding based off the IPA, it's like one of my triggers. And I'm just like, oh my God, guys, see, this is why. Ignore the freaking IPA. Any last minute questions, guys? Any last minute questions? give a minute or two here because I'm going to have to go. Now's the chance. I will say, see, because I really, I'll explain this, right? Often, yes, I have this. It's don't even worry about what this is. It's a little. It's from my webcam. From the webcam's up there. I don't need it. Often, I'm like, I really want to make that lesson. That lesson, it would be cool. It'd be a good lesson. Yeah, let's do that. And then it's like, I don't make the lesson. Because I get distracted by stuff. Obviously, I have like work to do. I have other things to do. And then I end up feeling bad because I'm like, oh, I didn't make the lesson. Maybe tomorrow. Then tomorrow doesn't happen either. Again, that's why I'm hoping to get this ADHD thing fixed or solved or addressed or whatever, because that would be nice. But I know you guys are waiting for content. I'm trying to do like at least once a week, and I'm kind of like really pushing it because it's like 8 days, 9 days, 10 days. I guess I really have to get a video because it's going to go to 2 weeks. That's going to be too much. So yeah, I'm trying. But I'm still here for the live streams, right? I haven't missed a live stream. So yeah, it's tough sometimes. It's been a tough month and a half. Super busy. But could you teach me how to pronounce area? It's air in it, right? Yeah. So let's see. Well, the thing about air, because I think this is taught a little bit differently than how I teach it. So air is just it's air. It's not air like a plus r. It's plus r. It's a r colored e. So just like in set, right? But air. So it would be airy, area. So I guess since you have this R, I'll go back to my paper. Area, it would be air. See, I always have to think about this with the R's. Air, because R colored, so air, airy. No, that's a small y. It's going to look so horrible now. Area. Okay, this is connected. Something like kind of like this. So we have R colored air, and then that R is also connecting over to the E. So it's like airy, and then there's a small Y linking E to The might get secondary stress. It doesn't matter. Area. So don't say like area or something like that. That doesn't exist. But I also want to say, is there a thing we can do here to reduce in the area? If you're speaking quickly, you can probably reduce air to I saw it somewhere in this area. Somewhere in this area. In really fast speech. So you can kind of ignore that, but that is a possibility. So hopefully that is clear. Area. Do you pronounce era like era or era? Well, good question. Well, obviously I said era. Thank you, crystal clear. Perfect. Yeah, so era is another pronunciation. And sometimes I might use it. I'm not aware of which one if I switch between the two. But there's nothing wrong saying era. Era. Nothing wrong saying era. But I always saw it as era. So that's probably the way I usually say it. The dawn of a new era, right? New era. Doesn't matter. Okay, well, I think we're pretty much done here. I got to go. So thank you guys very much. Got it. Last second, Gabriel. Last second. No more questions, guys. We're done. Is this phrase grammatically correct? I'm late. I assume you capitalize for emphasis to point it out. I'm late, so is my mom. Is it also possible to pronounce it that way? So you're saying I'm late, and because I'm late, that also means that my mom is late. Is that what the sentence is? Because that would work. But when you put SO apostrophe S, that like we wouldn't write that. But if you mean I'm late, so is my mom, meaning I'm late and so also my mom is late. That is grammatically correct. And in speech, you can contract and say, I'm late, so's my mom. That's fine. You can use a spoken contraction there if that's what you mean. Yeah. Oh my God, guys, I gotta go. You're welcome, David. Could you please pronounce, okay, color. First one, ka, and then color. Second one, collar, collar. It's just the first syllable, or collar. Well, but the thing that we dropped to S, ask, ¿cómo estás and cómo estás? But we do drop it to answer like, está bien. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's in cases like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Whatever. Thank you for your dedication. You're welcome. And this channel is about English. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the Spanish speakers do. We're here to learn English. So, okay. Well, thank you guys very much. I'm going to go. See you guys next week. I'm going to try to get out that new lesson within the next day or two. I'm really going to try. But regardless of what happens next week, I have my appointment on Monday. And so if I don't get the result that I want, then I'm just going to kind of try to like suck it up and just be like, okay, focus and let that go. So more content will be coming. I'm trying. But thank you guys very much. And yes, you are welcome. See you next week.